Hello everybody and welcome along to the countdown to green as we bring sound and vision together for round 3 of the European Championship for the FIA International Endurance Series, the Hankook 12H BRNO, as we are ready for the first part of the race. Lovely to have your company. It's a fantastic day here in the Czech Republic, and the first 3 hours will take us through till just around about 7 o'clock tonight here Central European time. Well, we have already started the season, of course. We were in Dubai in the first week of January, second week in January. Then we came over to Europe for a new circuit, to me at least, Mugello, back on the calendar this year. Great race there. Edge of the seat stuff at Spa-Francorchamps in April, and that brings us here to Brno, another very, very technical circuit. Our first European-based 24-hour series race, or 24-hour race in the calendar this year is the 5th, 6th and 7th of July, and that will be in Portugal at Portimao. Barcelona is at the end of August and the beginning of September, expecting a big crowd there, as always, in Catalonia. No Grand Prix now, so this will become the second biggest event after MotoGP there, and we'll round off the European part of the season. The champion of the continents will be crowned at the 24 Hours of COTA in Austin, Texas, as we head to the circuit of the Americas in the middle week of November. So that's what we've got to look forward to, and great to have the whole team with us here. Paul Truswell and Johnny Palmer with me, John Hindorf here in the booth. It'll be Joe Bradley and Nick Damon down on the pitch straight, where the cars have already begun to make their way there. In fact, most of the cars are there, but not all. Let's get down to Nick for his traditional grid walk as we count down to green for the Hankook 12H BRNO. Good afternoon, Nick.
Good afternoon, John. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to a wonderfully sunny Brno. The track temperature gauge behind me tells me the track temperature is 39 degrees. The air temperature is 22 degrees. The drivers and the ladies who are supporting the pole position are enjoying a lovely warm day. No chilblains here. And the car they're celebrating is the 88 machine that's in pole. And it was put there by this young man, which is Marcus Winkelhock. Marcus, what a great term at Creventic, put the car on pole.
Yeah, qualifying was good. We were struggling a little bit with grip, but I think the track is really low grip since we are here. So it was not easy to put the lap together. I also did a mistake in the mid-sector, but for sure it's nice for me, for my team, to be on pole position, but it's a 12-hour race, so the proper job has to be done now.
Now, you're known as the man who led his home Grand Prix in his one F1 race for Spiker all those years ago, but how much GT racing do you do?
Basically only GT racing. I'm driver for Audi Sport Customer Racing since 2013 now, and I do GT races all over the world, doing many championships, and no, I like it, I have to say, a lot. GT racing is a lot of fun. It's good racing on really nice racetracks all over the world, and no, it's a pleasure. It's really cool to be part of the Audi family.
So you've raced all around the world. It's low grip, but how do you like Brno as a circuit?
Amazing racetrack. It's been a while. I've been here, I think 2004 the last time. But it's a really, really nice racetrack. Unfortunately, this weekend we have a little bit low grip, but I think during the race the grip level, when you put some rubber on the tarmacs, should get better.
Now, you're in casual gear. Are you going to go out in this first part of the race, or are you saving yourself for tomorrow?
Probably I will do only the 9-hour race tomorrow. So I'm going to save my driving time for the Saturday race then.
Thanks, Marcus. Now, what Marcus is alluding to, of course, this is a 2-part race. We have 3 hours today, and then we come back tomorrow morning and do 9 more. And the key thing for all teams, in whichever class you're in, stay on the lead lap for the first 3 hours. Second qualifier is another Audi R8. It's the OLIP team. Unfortunately, they're new, and this is one of our... Are you the starting driver, sir?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I hold the fan, because the race is really long.
You haven't got a fan holder. Someone should hold the fan for you. Honestly, this man's on second front row. Come on, hold his fan.
Yeah. Everything is my hand, like manager told us. But yeah, and we can, you know, I'm looking forward to the start, and yeah, and no mistake. So it is really important for us.
So Matthias, you qualified the car. Perfect lap, or was there still time in it?
I think yes. I think we did a really good job, and the lap was quite good as well. Of course, we could improve like 2 tenths, but anyway, we are happy about the lap.
How are you finding the Creventic Championship? You're a well-travelled racer, Blancpain and places like that.
Yeah, I think from Orium Racing, we organized the competition like Creventic, so we are happy with that. And you have really good lineup in the car as well. We have a Karol Bash, so he's really experienced driver, and he's driving a Lambo Super Trofeo. The Marcin Jedliński is a champion of FIAC, so yeah, we have really good lineup, and I think we can do something in this race.
Great stuff, thank you, Matthias. Now, we're going to come to position 3 on the grid, and there is a very touching tribute, John, to the motor racing legend that we lost earlier this week. In front of the the Scuderia Ferrari, there's another one, is a very nice little model of the 1977 Ferrari, which Niki Lauda claimed the World Championship. The lack of an airbox means it's probably a 76 or 77, depends on which part of the regulation change it was. But it's a very nice model, and it's a very nice tribute for the main Ferrari team, for Niki Lauda. The interesting thing is about this, of course, that if I was about to interview Niki Lauda right now, you would have to have your finger on the bleep button, because the man was a genius, a legend, very straightforward, and always exciting to interview. Now, let's see if someone can match him in modern days. And let's say, Matteo Malucelli. Will he be chuffed, Matteo? Or will he be slightly dour, Matteo? Let's find out. Matteo, 3rd on the grid for the team's home race. Happy with that?
No, because I did a mistake. It was my fault in the good lap. And here we have only 1 lap good for the tires. And so was maybe pole position or the same of the first, but now we are P3, and you know the race is 12 hours.
So, were you not here yesterday? No one saw you in the car yesterday?
Yeah, we had a small problem with the barriers, but now the car is fine.
So a lot of setup changes we've seen throughout the cars. I mean, is the track particularly tricky this weekend?
I don't know. We are really struggling with the rear. We are changing the setup every day, every laps. I don't know. I hope we have the correct setup for the race.
I hope so too. Thanks you, Matteo. So that's the 3rd place qualifier, the Scuderia Praha Ferrari. There is a 2nd Ferrari from Wochenspiel Racing. Over the other side, we have the 34 car collection Audis. That's 3 Audis in the top 4. And we'll grab a quick word with Max Edelhoff. Max, it looks like, certainly in qualifying, it's an Audi track.
Yeah, it seems so. Yeah, I think it's a very nice track for the Audi, and we have a very good pace. But the track is very difficult this weekend. We have we have less grip than we have expected. But I think with the Audi, we have a great car to have a great race.
And you've got a stripped-out team. Your dad's not here. Elmer's not here. Why is that?
Elmer had a little operation with his knee, so he got a new one. And my father said, okay, 12 hours don't make really sense with 4 drivers, so we decided that me, Ingo and Johannes will drive this race, and yeah, I think we have a good pace together.
And in the AM class, do you think you can win that class?
I think we have the opportunity to win the class. We have to fight very hard against the others and our teammate. And I think with Markus Winkelhock, we have a very good challenge. But yeah, we will see.
Got good news for you. Marcus isn't going to drive in the first 3 hours. He's told me that. So what are your tactics for the first 3 hours? Go on, tell us. We won't say anything.
I think we will push very hard, but we still keep in mind that it's a 12-hour race and a team race, so we have to see how we can push and bring the car back to the pit.
Max, thanks very much, mate. Interesting, 2 things. Max A, even though he's about 19, is still growing. He's taller than he was, and also his English is improving. Hello, what a lovely smile. Thank you very much. And here comes our other perennial favourite. And great news for me. I know exactly which Renault this is, because only one's here. It's Robert. Robert, first of all, where's your brother this weekend?
Oh, he's hanging out in Monaco.
It's tough, isn't it?
Nice place to be in, this weekend. Yeah, he has to support the Porsche Supercar for Team Australia.
Team Australia. He's doing the mobile one for Team Australia.
Australia, yeah.
Did he get lost? Oh, hang on. Is this a hangover from Eurovision? Now Australian get represented by everyone else.
It's nice, huh? Yeah, it's good for him to be there, but I also enjoy to be here in Brno. It's a nice racetrack. Unfortunately, we are only P6 now. A lot of work to do to get to the first places here, but yeah, anyway, 12 hours to go.
Now we've seen a lot of cars having real issues with the grip, and a lot of the GT cars with rear grip. Does that make it easier for you with the Porsche, with the engine over towards the back now, not over the back anymore, or not?
Yeah, maybe a bit, but anyway, we are struggling as well. It was a little bit weird because we did the first outing with a used set of tires and the second one with the new set, and it was no different feeling to the car. So yeah, I don't know if it was just a set of tires or it makes no difference. Now we are starting with used one, and yeah, we will see what happens.
Thanks, Robert. Now, on this grip walk, I've already hit an issue of having two armchair experts. First of all, Joe Bradley corrected me on the year of the model of the Niki Lauda car, and now Porsche aficionado John Hindhaugh was correcting me. This, the GT3 car, still has the engine hanging over the back, whereas, of course, the GTE car has it swapped round and in the middle. But there we are. And we need to find some... Has anyone got a Triumph TR4A on the grid? Because I'm certainly the expert as far as that is. Independent rear suspension, of course. Okay, now the CP Racing, a collection of whole team of CPs. And do you know what? I'm going to speak to Manfred Sam Bickley from Hankook.
Hi.
Manfred, everyone is complaining about low grip.
Yeah.
Is that your fault or the track?
I'm responsible for tires, not for the track and not for the grip level in general. No, everybody's complaining, that's true, yeah. But it's the same for everybody. And what we saw so far, the track is not so fast than in the past, but let's wait until the race starts. We will have more rubber on the track and so on. Important for me is that everybody is satisfied with the product Hankook so far. So this is very important for me, and they will find the speed.
Serious question, Manfred. What advice are you giving the teams on tyre pressures?
You can talk to my engineer Thomas. No, we gave always a recommendation which is approximately 2 bar. So some teams follow our recommendation, the others go their own way. We only can recommend, please respect our recommendation, because we know what we are doing. We are the specialist. So therefore, we always go the same way. A lot of talkings and so on. Cross your fingers that everybody trusts in us.
Sure they do. Thank you, Manfred. And of course, Hankook providing brilliant tyres here for the last, 4 seasons is now, since we changed to the Hankook. Ah, Charles, the man with his initials above the door. There we go. Towards the back of the GT field, is that deliberate? Just let them all go too fast?
I don't think any racer is ever deliberately at the back of anything. No, not at all. But as usual, we're trying to plan our setups and work for the long picture. So, yeah, we don't quite have the speed that some of the other cars showed in practice and qualifying, but we think we're good there for the whole race.
Charles, do you think you can actually stay on the lead lap or just the class lead lap in this first 3 hours session?
Well, we certainly hope to stay on the overall lead lap, today. Obviously, those top couple of cars show some real speed. The pro cars are really pretty quick. So they've been able to lap us in the past, but that's our goal, is to stay away from that, at least on day one.
Charles, you were here in the past in the Porsche, and now you're in Brno in the big old banger Merc. Is it a track you like in both cars?
Oh, yeah. I mean, both cars are always fun to drive anywhere you go. I mean, they're just different types of things. But we just recently got in the Porsche again to try out the Nürburgring 24-hour, and I said, I'd forgotten how much fun these cars are. So they're all good. They're all fun.
Charles, thank you very much. Well, Charles, a big fan of the Brno, but John, talk us round it.
Oh, it's a fantastic place here at Brno. Across the start-finish line, you head down to this first right-handed corner, braking just at the end of the curb, and it's a double apex right. Turn 2 isn't a turn at all. You can ride all of the curb and the AstroTurf. Set yourself up on the right-hand side for 3 and then 4, coming in quick succession. Watch out for grip there, particularly on new tyres. 5, 6, 7. Well, 5 and 6 you have to think of as one corner rather than 2, and then 7, one of the slower parts of the circuit. You're starting to fall downhill now. 8 and 9, and down to the lowest part of the track at turn number 10. And that, again, you're having to think about getting over the right-hand side for 11 and 12 as you start to climb up the hill. One of the longest straight parts. 13 and 14, left and right, the last two corners onto the straight. You've got to get 14 right. 13, defend if you have to, but get through 14 as quick as you can, because that will help you down the main straight and try and repel anyone that's trying to come up the inside at turn 1.
And we're at the other pole position, which of course is the TCE race. And in this car, the orange car, it's Broikers, Broikers and Broikers. Who wants to talk to me? Which Broikers wants to talk? It's Rick, starting the car. Luke, no, we've asked for a Luke. Where's Luke? Where's Luke? It's the toilet. Oh. Rick, obviously, not only are you faster than your brother, you have better bladder control, but put the thing on pole. What's the target for the first few hours?
The target is to finish in the same way we start, so on P1. That's our aim and our goal, and let's hope we can do that.
I mean, do you, as the team leader, whatever your dad says, I mean, do you set the car up so that the other guys can drive fast, or you set it up so you can drive fast?
I think we mainly do the setup on the car to save the tires, since this track is really really hard on the tires. So I try to do my best to get a good setup to save the tires until the end of the stint.
Thanks, Rick. Obviously, Rick starting Evo. Are you going second, or are you letting Luke in from the toilet?
Probably Luke will go straight in after the toilet. And it's going to be an interesting race. It's about three things. It's about tires, tires, and tires.
Sounds like F1. Thanks, boys. Right, across to the other car, which is the all-Swedish team. And I shall speak to Mr... No, don't run it. Yeah, well, I've spoken to him, Mr. Falstrom, from the Lestrup Racing. Oh, I get an umbrella. How lovely. Thank you very much. So you have a superstar qualifying the car for you. How's the rest of the team?
We are really strong. We have paced really good under this weekend, and we are really hopeful to bring the car home and in a good pace.
So, Peter, I mean, are you going to fight for every position, or just take it easy in the first 3 hours, try and stay on the lead lap, not get in any trouble?
Our focus is trying to stay on the lead lap, absolutely. But we will see what's happening and the degradation of the tires and so on. So there are different possibilities. Either stop and change tires, or try to go for 1.5 hours on the same tires.
So are you using brand new tyres at the start of the race, or the ones that did a few laps in qualifying?
Top secret, no, but they are brand new.
They're brand new. Brilliant. Thanks, Peter. So it's interesting, really. It's the first time we've had this tyre situation I can remember in a Creventic race. So we may see more pit stops, and we will definitely think it's unlikely anyone's going to double stint. Here is the SP3 leader, though they're not actually in SP3 because they are running in a sort of adjusted TC car. It's the ABBA 334 and Sam Neary. Sam, about to take part in the race in a completely different car, but racing the front-wheel drive cars, the rear-wheel drive car. Have you got an advantage?
We're not sure about the advantage yet. Qualifying, obviously, we qualified P4, so not right now. It's not looking like we have much of an advantage, and hopefully it should be a really good race. So we'll have to wait and see.
And how is the handling of this car? All the other teams are moaning about lack of grip and too much tyre wear. Are you able to have a more balanced tyre situation?
No, we're in the exact same boat. We've had qualifying was a lot of oversteer and understeer coming into corners. So I think it's just the track doesn't have as much grip as it did yesterday. So we'll have to see, but I don't think there's much of an advantage. But hopefully we can find one to try and gain a few places.
Thank you, Sam. So that's the top SP3, but running in TCR, qualified in 4th for the TCE race. A couple of things I wanted to point out, John, one of which I think you'll be very excited about, is that I just spotted this on the 130 Hyundai car. It's an amazing, look, they're being sponsored by White Bikes. That's good news, isn't it, for them? The other thing is that the 464 car, which is the GT4 Mercedes QSR Racing School team, that's not on this grid. That's actually still parked in the pit lane. I spoke to the driver. He said, I was driving round and it made a nasty noise at the back. We don't know what it is. We thought we'd better take a look. Fair enough. And others we're looking around there, the car you probably see we haven't mentioned, the stalwart, the 10 Hoffen machine, that's not racing this weekend, even though you may have seen Christian Frankenhout in some of our coverage. So that is me from the front to the back in the sun. Back to you, John.
In the green tower, thank you, Nick Damon, in massively brilliant arm waving and flappy form down there on the grid. No Hoffer AMG GT3, as Nick rightly said, that car had a damage to the chassis, we heard from Christian Frankenhout earlier on in our radio coverage of FP1, which is available on the archive, and we've already archived the qualifying sessions as well at www.radio-show.co.uk. It's a aluminium chassis, that's aluminum for those of you listening in the United States, and they wanted to make sure it was going to be sorted out correctly. The word from Christian and the rest of the team, now that we've done a bit of digging, is that that car should be ready and rejoining us in Catalunya when we go down there at the end of August, beginning of September for the 24-hour race. So expect to see that car back. A couple of minutes before we roll off, coming up next, we will have the first 3 hours of the race. There's a bit of a crowd here. People have been coming in since mid-morning, since we did qualifying, and so we will have some spectators here. There was a little bit of a buzz around the paddock at lunchtime. That just wasn't from the insects that have been brought out by the warm weather. Good to see some families here as well at BRNO. Paul Truswell, Johnny Palmer, John Hindhaugh, and in the pit lane, Nick Damon and Joe Bradley, and the Hankook 12H BRNO first 3 hour section is coming next, live from trackside. Well, we've got a Hyundai at the head of the field, ready to lead the cars off. Good afternoon to Paul Truswell and to Johnny Palmer, who joined me, John Hindhaugh, in the booth. Half a minute. Two Hyundais, actually, to lead the field around, because we will have a split start for the GT portion of the race and the TCE Championship race behind it. Paul, good afternoon. What do you expect in this first 3 hours?
I don't really know, because I wasn't expecting Marcus Finkelhock not to drive today. So he's plonked the car on pole position. But the driving for today's 3 hours is going to be shared between Tim Muller, Jürgen Hering and Taki Constantinou. And to be honest, they're not going to quite have the pace, I don't think, of the rest of them. Certainly, we've already heard from the Olymp racing team, Matthias Lisowski, we know is a regular at BRNO. He knows the track, and I was talking to somebody down on the grid. I sneaked down into my own little grid walkabout before Nick got down there, and he said, you know, the trouble with all these Czechs that are here is just they know this place, they know how it behaves, and we're all complaining about lack of grip. The Czechs just have a little bit more experience here.
And know the vagaries of the circuit and how it will evolve over this first 3 hours, and then the 9 hours tomorrow, all of which we have live with no breaks, no blocks and no fees either. Johnny, here's how they line up at the front of the fields.
Yeah, it's well, we've had different manufacturers on pole position all year, because it was a Lamborghini in Dubai, it was a Mercedes in Mugello and a Ferrari in Spa. So now an Audi makes it a fourth different car from the front of the grid. Car Collection versus Olymp 88 and the 8 car, who are the locals from Poland. Matteo Malicelli, championship leader, along with his teammate Jiri Pisaric and Josef Kral for Bohemia Energy, alongside Max Edelhoff. We heard from him a little earlier on with Nick Damon on the grid.
If you look a little bit further down, the top is the top of the 991 Cup class is the two Porsche Lorient racing cars. They start in 10th and 11th position. The top GT4, well, that's the two KTM cars. And watch out for Thomas Enger, local favourite in the 224 car, although it looks like that car's going to be started by Eike Angermeyer, that number 224 car. As far as the TCR pool is concerned, Rick Breukers will be starting the 101 red camel car. Alongside him, Marcus Flüch, who ran them hard in the qualifying session in the 110 Volkswagen from Lestrup Racing Team. And in A3, heck of a battle. Only 3 cars in there. Synchros Honda from the BMW M240i, Hoffer Racing by Bonkley, Martin Kroll driven car at the start of this race, and the 666 is Michael Reinhoff for Winkler Tuning in the diesel engine BMW E46. First time we've had one of those cars in a diesel engine car, a compression ignition engine in one of these grids for quite some time. 31 cars with the Mercedes starting from the pit lane, the 454. Jimmy De Bruycker will start the QSR Racing School. What does that mean for getting out onto the track, Paul?
Well, the rules are a bit ambiguous. So, theoretically, he can actually join in when the last car goes past. What it doesn't say is whether the last car goes past on a racing lap or on the formation lap.
As far as onboard cameras, the 101 pole sitter for the TCE category is carrying one of our onboard cameras, and that's Rick Breukers driving that car. And we've got actually half a dozen cars with that. AC Motorsports Audi sitting down here with Vincent Rademacher in the TCR category, 25th position overall. They've got an onboard on as well. Then it's the 676. That car will be starting from pole position in A3, and Alan James is driving that car. Just the 2 drivers there, he and Dan Wheeler. Moving up the grid, we have got the RTR, that's the 224 car. Again, another pole sitter, so our onboard cameras seem to have brought the cars good luck. Elke Angermeyer starting one of 2 crossbows. That is the one that Thomas Enger will be driving later on. I wonder if he'll do any work today or save his hours for tomorrow. Let's move further up the field and to Max Edelhoff in 4th position for Car Collection Motorsport. That's the blue and white Kirchhoff Group sponsored car. And our final onboard camera, 2nd in A6 Pro, but 3rd overall. It is Matteo Malacelli, who is known for his lightning fast starts. So expect to see him trying to get past the 2 Audis ahead of him in that number 11 car. Now, onboard camera on that car may well give us some very interesting looks indeed. On to the second of 2 formation laps. They'll line up 2 by 2 on a circuit that from turn 10 to the start-finish line climbs something, Johnny, like, well, in fact, it's over 160 feet, 70-odd metres,
Yes,
isn't it?
it is, yeah. 74 metres, pretty much, from the lowest point at turn 11 up to just beyond the start-finish straight, that back straight, just about the highest point on the circuit. But a real challenge that you can overtake round here. That's something that has surprised many people. Known as a bike track, known as a real momentum circuit, but it's nice and wide in most places, so therefore lappery shouldn't be a huge drama, and also maybe a do-or-die manoeuvre on this opening lap to take the lead.
Let's just do a bit of house companying. The QSR Mercedes 454, Jimmy De Bruycker, was allowed to join on the back of the GT grid as they went by at the end of the first formation lap. So he is at the back of the grid, so he's not where he qualified necessarily, but he is in front of the TCR cars.
And importantly, that means he uses up the fuel of the formation laps, because sometimes you can get an advantage by staying in the pits during the formation lap. So he'll have to use up fuel along with everybody else.
We've seen that actually as a tactical card played at Le Mans before. This it was a favourite tactic of Hugh Chamberlain down through the years, to elect to start from the pit lane, avoid all the schmozzle on the first lap.
Quick couple of other housekeeping points. There was a very late change of BOP between qualifying and the race. The 2 KTM crossbows running with less boost and less fuel available to them, and the BMW from ABBA gets more fuel available to it.
Right, let's have a quick listen to the stop-go of Matteo Malacelli. He's trying to get some heat into the tyres, coming round to the penultimate chicane as they climb up. Here's what the Ferrari sounds like. now getting into 2x2 formation. Two Audis almost touching. No, they do touch. Oh, and there's a bit of hip and shoulder going on. Tim Muller is pulling into Matthias Lozowski. Didn't like that at all, as the Olymp and Paul Sitting car collection motorsport car are banging into each other, coming into the final corner before we go green. 3 hours today, and it's kicked off before we've even hit the green. The Hyundai will pull into the pit lane, and taking you through the first part of the race, Johnny Palmer, take a deep breath.
That was a weird moment, wasn't it? They're not teammates, remember, despite them being both in Audi R8s. The red lights go out then, and we're racing for the fourth time of the year. The Ferrari straight to the inside line, and also look out for on the outside, Max Edelhoff. He might lead into turn one. He does in the white and blue car, right round the outside. He thought, well, if you two guys in the Audis are going to play fun and games, I'll just put the right foot down and accelerate away from you. Matteo Magliucelli slotting into second position then, and then the two Audis with chunks out of one another already into third and fourth positions as the TCRs get underway in the TCE Series race. A great cloud of dust kicking up, and the ABBA BMW trying to thread the eye of the needle, can't do it as Rick Brokers wastes no time at all in romping away into the lead of the race. Slotting into second position is the Monlau competition, the 112 rather, which is the Autorama Motorsport Volkswagen Golf Anti-Burri, which has got off the marks very neatly indeed. So Burri versus Brokers at the top of the field, and now Magliucelli managing to get ahead of Max Edelhoff. So it is the Scuderia Praha Ferrari on home ground that leads this opening lap.
Extraordinary start. Lots of wheel spin coming to the line. Big black lines coming out of the final corner and down to the first corner. Red Camel Jordan leading with Rick Breukers behind the wheel, but I've never seen that much bumping and barging from the front row before. Absolutely extraordinary stuff. Clear air for the bright orange Seat, and a great start as well for the black and green BMW from ABBA Commercials. And the incident involving the 88 and the 8 before the start is under investigation. I thought, Johnny, that Magliucelli was going to do an action replay of what happened in Italy when he jumped the two leaders at the start. It's taken him a couple of corners longer than that, but Edelhoff was the man on the move. What a great opportunist manoeuvre.
He was, certainly, because I think the other two were distracted. Tim Muller and Matthias Lizowski playing their own games, and Edelhoff fully focused on the road in front. He got the jump round to the left side of those two on the front row. The Ferrari went the other way and went to the right side of those cars, and then there was potentially a pincer movement going into the first corner, which is about 400 metres down the road from the start-finish line. More overtaking. I think this is going to be a race-long battle between the BMW M4 of Thomas Jaeger, who gets the place on the Aston Martin, which in this opening stint is being driven by Nico Verdonk. So not only has Richard Gonda got through in the Schenker Motorsport BMW M4, but also Jaeger slotting into the next position, which will be 15th place and therefore third in the GT4s. So at the moment, the balance of performance adjustment for the KTMs is certainly having an effect as far as one crossbow is concerned, the one driven by Gabriela Zhilkova. However, the team car driven by Thomas Enger, and the first outing for Thomas Enger as a driver for a little while, he is stretching his legs in GT4. But Schenker Motorsport, Pro Sport Motorsport, and the second of the BMWs promising to put on quite a show, I think, as far as GT4 is concerned. That's the Hoffer Racing by Bonk Motorsport car of Thomas Jaeger that made the pass. 22 Ferrari of Leo Weiss dueling with Matthias Lizowski, and in fact that has been a place change. And also Sam Neary's now ahead of Rick Brokers for the TCE Series lead, so maybe superior straight line speed for that BMW. It's in a different class from the orange Cupra, remember. TCR for Rick's car and Sam in an SP3 machine.
But that is the battle for the TCE part of this race. Remember, two completely distinct championships in this race, the GT Endurance Series, the TC, the Touring Car Endurance Series. That's the battle for the lead of that, and the BMW's got it, and they've come here to win that portion of the race. Never mind about SP3, never mind about what class they get stuck in. They've come to beat all the TCR cars, and that's all they want to do.
Well, that's what they're doing at the moment.
And frankly, if they beat the 101, they probably will win the race. Because they've got to be a hot favourite around here.
I would agree with that, certainly. Nose to tail again, Leo Weiss and Matthias Lisowski, but Lisowski's the car that's been overtaken, so he's running in 5th place as Olymp Racing return to the 24H series for the first time in 2 years. And the team from Debika in Poland, it's only probably a 4-hour drive from where they are based to near neighbours, the Czech Republic, and those drivers know this track very well through a variety of Volkswagen racing in the past. Sirocco Cup, for instance, Lisowski's won the Sirocco Cup and a VW Golf one-make championship in recent years. But Matteo Malicelli is going to take some holding back here because he's turning purple again on this lap, lap 3. Best lap so far at 2:03, but that was the first flying lap after obviously 2 formation laps, and then we'll give him a lap to get rolling. Or perhaps not in the case of the 2 Audis, as they, as I say, banged door handles on the approach to the penultimate corner.
Possible jump start, Paul Truswell, that's under investigation as well, with 2 cars being looked at there by Race Control.
Didn't actually see that message come through, John. Which 2 cars were it that...
That was a great move from Radomak around the outside of Antti-Burri to take a place in the AC Motorsports Audi. Remember, that's the team that concentrated during qualifying on race pace, but we reckon Max Edelhoff, is now really struggling with the speed of the 34 car collection Audi, and getting closer and closer in the rear view mirror is Robert Renauer in the black and maroon coloured Herbert Motorsport Porsche.
Well, start procedure and possible jump start violations for the 34, Max Edelhoff, and the 88, the pole-sitting Tim Muller car collection, bright orange car, who's now down in 6th position, by the way, so did themselves no real favours, did he and Matthias Lisowski in banging wheels and door mirrors as they were coming through the final chicane and onto the start-finish straight. Just nonsense stuff, to be honest, at the start of what is, albeit 2 parts, but still a 12-hour race. Malicelli's cleared off, 5 seconds now. The lead between the Bohemia Energy Racing machine and the car collection, Max Edelhoff behind him. Car 11, no further action at the start. So that was Malicelli, who he must have been investigating for a jump start as well, excuse me. So we'll keep an eye on these as they come through. Our colleagues at Race Control and Timing do tend to tell us when they've looked at something and then decided not to make any penalty. Number 1, Nico Verdonk, 4th in GT4 in the new Aston Martin for Pro Sport Performance. You didn't watch Spa and you only watched Misano, you might not recognise that car. It's had a lot of livery placed on, a bit more colour, bit of dark grey, bit of dark red on that car, light red, excuse me, on that car. And the TCE battle is already underway with the leading Red Camel Jordan car just ahead of Monlaus Cupra, then AC Motorsports Audi and the Autorama Motorsport by Wolf Racing Golf in 4th position. That's how they stand in TCR at the front of the field. And coming onto the main straight, the leader is that unmistakable dark Ferrari red of Bohemia Energy, as he, in fact, excuse me, he's already so quick, he's already through into turns 3 and 4. And this battle, Johnny, is for 2nd and 3rd position between Edelhoff and the Robert Renard Herbert Motorsport Porsche, one of 2 of the Herbert cars in the race this weekend.
Yeah, 5-second lead now for Italian driver Matteo Malicelli. They're championship leaders for 2019, and they've been the only car victorious here at Brno in the past, when the Brno round was the last round of the season in 2015 and 16. Meanwhile, Tim Muller falling back into the clutches now of Charles Espenlaub and Manuel Zumstein, because he's got 2 AMGs on the tail and one of them at the inside. In fact, 85 goes for a move, but Tim Muller can fight back. Now, he's had experience of being involved with a car that's led a race this season, because he raced with Valentin Pierberg and Tom Onslow-Cole at Mugello. Again, Espenlaub late on the brakes and should get the move done. And what about the MDC car? We're in the hands of Manuel Zumstein, the Swiss outfit, rather German outfit with Swiss driver, and the second of the AMGs looking to get by.
That all started at turn 1, and it was turn 3 by the time the pass was made. Here's the big news from the start. Well, all started, as I say, I'll give you that in a moment. The CP racing car was 2 Hankooks on the grass at turn 1, and I thought that was going to completely ruin the run-up to turn 2, but that's where the pass, to turn 3 rather, that was where the pass was made. 10-second time penalty for a jump start for 107. That's Stuart Hall in the Monlau competition Cupra, currently second in TCR, and a 30-second penalty for Max Edelhoff. I think it was 30 seconds, I saw that. Sorry, that's now gone down to 10. So it's both 10-second penalties for the Edelhoff car, and the diesel BMW is in trouble as well. This is the Winkler tuning machine, the 666 car out at the, that's I think just coming out of turn 10 and heading back up the hill, and that car is off to driver's left. We could see a code 60. We are seeing a code 60. So if you're not used to this kind of racing, everybody slows down to 60 kilometers an hour. There are other series that do this, that call it virtual safety car. The effect is the same. No overtaking, gentlemen, particularly those of you on the front straight. And that looks to me as though Robert Renaud has gone by the 34 car now. Did that happen before the code 60 came out? That must have happened just before the start-finish line. So 10-second time penalties, jump starts being assessed on Stuart Hall in TCR, the Monlau competition number 107, and Max Edelhoff for Car Collection Motorsport. Now that, well, he's just missed the pit lane there. So he could have dived in there and taken a 20-second stop under the code 60. Now, the code 60 flag is out when the overtaking goes on. So that needs to be restitution there. And there's some flashing of the lights from Max Edelhoff. I would say, Johnny, that he knows that he lifted off, and Robert Renaud has gone through and he's flashing the lights there in the 34 blue and white car collection car to say, hey, come on, guys, that can't be allowed to stand.
And this is not a rule whereby the code 60 kicks in at the line.
No,
it is
it's
completely instantaneous.
Yeah.
So the code 60 is called, the flags come out, and you have to get down to the 60 kilometres per hour as soon as you can,
as soon as you see the code 60 flag, and not when you go past the code 60 flag.
That's exactly right. James Hewitt has tweeted at RSL Studio and used the hashtag 24H series. He says, I can't believe that. Somebody should surely be looking at what happened at the end of the formation lap. They are. Not necessarily a penalty unless repeat offending, but someone certainly needs to be warned and told to calm down. Calm down, calm down. Thank you, James. At RSL _studio if you want to get us on Twitter. Haven't heard anything about that first incident yet. The more obvious jump start penalties have been applied to the 2 cars that we mentioned, but there will have to be restitution here, or there will be a penalty. And we know, Johnny, from the past, and in fact you were at Spa a couple of years ago when it was a race deciding mistake under code 60, because the penalties are quite draconian for not observing code 60.
Yeah, that was the brokers, Seat, I think it was in those days, and the Anti-Burri car, which again is in this race, and they were overlapping. Anti-Burri wasn't with Autoroma Motorsport at the time, but is in this race, and yeah, caught overlapping. And I think actually the code 60s were of differing speeds, which didn't help. Car 91 is under investigation again for possible overtaking. That's basically what we're referring to. The places have now been exchanged, so well, I don't know whether that rectifies the problem, frankly. They will review it, and if there was a breach of the rules, it might be a double whammy there. Yes, you've given the place back, but you still have to serve the penalty. In reference to Max Edelhoff, I don't think you're allowed to come in during a code 60 to serve a penalty. You said he could have dived in the pit lane.
You can. It's twice the penalty.
Right, okay.
It's twice the penalty.
I'm sure we've had that argument before as well, but
yes,
maybe it's been refined for 2019.
Any penalty you can take on a normal pit stop. You don't have to come in for a special stop-and-go penalty pit stop. You can make it as part of your normal pit stop, and during a code 60, the length of the penalty is doubled.
Right.
The amount
it's
of
still
fuel,
worth taking.
generally, I haven't actually done the calculation for this circuit, but generally, yes, it is worth taking.
If you're doing a normal pit stop, of course, these guys are so close to the start of the race, they won't even get half their fuel allowance in, so it may not be worth coming in.
Putting for the fuel in, exactly.
Yeah, that's probably why they haven't come in. First 15 minutes then, gentlemen. Plenty of action going on. Nick Damon will be flooded with people in the pit lane, presumably. Or maybe not, Nick? Hello, Nick. Just not getting Mr. Damon for the moment. Go on, Nick.
Hello. It's because the camera had gone into sleep, believe it or not.
Right.
So the camera has noticed we've not had anyone come in for 15 minutes. It's really interesting because normally you get at least a mini flurry with every code 60, but if CJ follows me round, look, empty, no action. So it's just a bit too early, as you said. You can't even get a quarter of a tank in, because don't forget, these cars won't just have their refuelling limit, which may be 105 or 110 litres. They'll be to the brim of the 120 plus litre tank they have. So, you know, they haven't even got that bit of air gap they might have if we talk about the restart tomorrow. So, yeah. Bit disappointing, because I love a bit of reporting, but yeah, I'm sure people run out of tyres soon. Excellent.
8 and 88 manages to race control. That'll be for the RG and, if you will, Bargy before the green flag. And Nick makes a good point there. The tanks in these cars are all at least big enough to take their fuel allowance, and most have considerably more. Different fuel allowances for different categories of car. That's also part of the balance of performance or equalisation that goes on here to try and make it a more level playing field. But everybody at the start of the race, of course, you have no fuel constrictions or restrictions at that point, so you brim fill the cars. And as they went past us there down the start-finish straight, confirmation again, just in case you didn't pick that up, the 91 car being investigated for overtaking under code 60 coming out the final corner, but the 34 car collection car has definitely, those two positions have definitely changed around. So the 91, the dark grey Porsche, now back in behind the white and blue number 34, and that presumably was as a result of some word from race control to make restitution. Either that or the 91 just pulled out of the way. What I hope we don't see now, Johnny, is poor Max Edelhoff, who's already got a 10-second penalty for a jump start, getting pinged for overtaking under a code 60.
Yeah, well...
you've got to ask, haven't you? You've got to get your team manager to ask. That's the thing.
True, yeah. And, well, for a lot of the Audis, it's not been the ideal race start, frankly, after they performed so well in qualifying. But these are the moments where you have to put those things out of your head and concentrate on the next chunk of the stint. There's still 2 hours and 42 minutes to go today before a significant 9 hours tomorrow. So this is about survival, really, and trying to stay on the lead lap to an extent. And a code 60 will help in that fact because we're doing less racing. The 88 Audi then just ahead of the Manuel Zumstein-driven MDC Sports Mercedes, and those two will be very closely bunched when we go back to green.
Which will happen in under 1 minute. Now this, again, if you're not used to seeing this form of racing, we haven't bunched the cars up behind a safety car because there's been no safety car. We don't have to wait for the leader to come back to the start-finish line. There's the green flags everywhere around the circuit at the same time. Problem for one of the KTM crossbows. And I think that's the lead car, the 224. Yes, it is. Did not get up to speed. And in fact, it's Thomas Enger who started that car. Now, that's not what was on that car as it was going round. So I gave you some wrong information there based on presumably what was on the driver ID.
Before they actually went out for the green flag. Yeah, Johnny actually did correct us at the beginning there to say it was Thomas Enger at the wheel of the KTM crossbow.
But I don't think that car's up to speed as the green flag came out.
Yeah, he gets ahead of him now at the first sector split. So
change of position.
A change of lead in GT4 and a change of class position, therefore, within the GT series.
the boost on the crossbow, just to put that into context, going down from 2.3 bar to 2.1 between qualifying and the race. So that's it's going to make a bit of a difference. It's almost 10% of a reduction in boost, and they're also given 10 litres less of fuel at every pit stop. So the KTM crossbows are going to be pegged back, and we'll see that evolving as the race progresses, because they're going to be stopping more frequently for fuel than the Aston Martin and BMW that were the class of the field in GT4 beforehand.
I also reckon the two 991 class leaders have switched around. It's still Porsche Lorient that leads the class, but 911 now running ahead of 912.
And there's a battle going on at the head of the TCR field as Stewie Hall, who has got a 10-second jump start penalty hanging over him, but he'll serve that when he comes into the pit lane for his first pit visit. The 107 of Stuart Hall, right with Rick Breukers, who is looking a little bit further down the road, 20-30 metres at the back of the car that's leading the TCE, the Touring Car Endurance Series, in this race. And that's Sam Neri, the son of Richard, who's driven the Team ABBA Racing BMW for some time. That car, the M3 V8 GTR, twice, Johnny, a winner of the Silverstone 24 Hours under two different sanctioning bodies, in fact.
Yes, that was prior to it being a Creventic run race, and afterwards as well. I haven't researched the years of that, but yes, it's got good pedigree in Northamptonshire, certainly, and they're trying to replicate that rather a long way away from home, but why not? It's stretching away now. As I mentioned, it is in a different subcategory within the TCE race, and maybe the kind of superior straight line speed is helping at the moment. What we might find is that the BMW's got to come into pit earlier than the TCRs, though, because fuel mileage on these TCR cars, very impressive indeed.
Extraordinary, yeah.
Rick Breukers and Stuart Hall then dicing for the TCR lead, and these cars are second and third in the TCE race.
And I'm sure the ABBA guys will be telling Sam what's going on behind, not necessarily because it's important that he knows that they're having a dice, but they're, number one, slowing each other up. Number two, they're using up their tyres.
Yep.
So Sam, calm down, take it easy, hit your marks, be nice and smooth, maybe even a bit of lift and coast. Just keep your minimum corner speed up and just take it easy. And that would be good advice for the young man at the moment. Paul Truswell.
Yeah, the other thing that the ABBA BMW, it's the only SP3 car in the field, and therefore it's the only car in the field that is subject to dynamic BOP. Dynamic BOP is this clever thing that Creventic have thought up, which means that cars get penalised during the course of the race. Now, the key lap time for Sam is 2 minutes 15. If he goes underneath 2 minutes 15, then his fuel allowance that he's allowed, tell a lie, because they've adjusted it to 2 minutes 14. It's become 2 minutes 14.
Right,
so
good.
if he goes underneath 2 minutes 15, nothing happens. If he goes underneath 2 minutes 14, he gets 10 litres less of fuel at every subsequent stop.
So not just the next stop.
Every subsequent stop. So doing it early in the race is a really, really, really bad idea.
2:14.6 is Sam's best lap already, so that's another good reason.
He's had two offences. If he gets a third offence, then the number of litres will go down by 10 litres at all the rest of the fuel stops throughout the rest of the race.
So that's another good reason for the pit wall to be onto him. First, second and third in TCR. Not leading TCE is the AC Motorsport Audi. Joins in with the two Cupras. And that, well, names to conjure with here, Johnny Palmer, as we've got Rick Breukers, Stuart Hall and Vincent Rademacher. First, second and third, and barely a couple of Cupras lengths between all of them.
It's fabulous stuff in TCR, and if we get one more involved as well with the Golf a bit further down the road, Antibury, shows a lot of speed for Autorama Motorsport, race winners already this year. Also a shout for local girl Gabriela Jilkova, who's just got ahead of Nico Verdonk in the GT4 category. Gabriela's done a season of Dutch Supercar Challenge within the last 5 years, and also some Clio Central Europe racing, but not sure whether she's ever got her hands on a KTM before, and doing pretty well in the sister car to Thomas Enger's machine. So 2:26 now up to fourth place on that lap, ahead of the Nico Verdonk-driven Aston Martin Vantage. And there was another change on that lap I noticed with, was that Enger getting back ahead of the BMW? to now be in front of Gonda, or was it Bastian ahead of Enger?
Correct.
It's Dominic Bastian getting ahead of Enger.
In the speed level of a Porsche, yes.
Yeah, so Bastian
fourth
is now
place
14th.
991 class car, ahead of second place GT4, and Enger slipping to 15th overall.
Still 2.5 hours of this to go.
I know,
This
I
is
know.
brilliant stuff. We're not going to get any darkness racing here this year. The clocks have changed here, so we're into summertime, and it was bright, very bright yesterday evening, well past the hour that we'll be finishing the race tomorrow. But what we are getting is some fantastic racing in all of the classes. Malicelli's now popped out to an 18-second lead. That's an average of 2 seconds a lap. And remember, we've had some Code 60, some full course purple in that. Herbert Motorsport with Robert Renard in second place. He's got a couple of seconds on Max Edelhoff. He's just closed in a little bit. They can't shake the Wochenspiegel. So Renard's gone back past Edelhoff, yes, okay. So the pass under Code 60 was given back, but now Renard has retaken second place. Even as I said that, I should have noticed it, shouldn't I? Leonard Weiss in the Wochenspiegel Team Monchak Ferrari is in fourth position, and he's just a second or so behind the blue and white Audi. But it's the front of the TCR field that is keeping our interest at the moment as they go through the first sweeping right-hander with the tree line on driver's left, double apex right-hand corner, and then right across the curbs on the exit, trying to straighten out the slight uphill run through turn 2 to turns 3 and 4, all the way to the, well, to and beyond the 100-metre board. You're just over the top of the rise before you start to brake. And Rick Breukers cannot shake Stuart Hall. Now, Stuart Hall's name you will know if you're in any way interested in endurance racing, but I can't stress highly enough, Johnny Palmer, how much of a disadvantage he is experientially in front-wheel drive cars to Rick Breukers, and to be hanging on to the class of the field here. Stewie Hall is doing a cracking job on a track that isn't conducive to this kind of racing at the moment.
Prototypes in the past, GTs in the past, but they've all been rear-wheel drive. Came through Formula Ford and Formula Renault, and then into British Formula 3. So yes, all of his experience pretty much in rear-wheel drive cars. We've now got the overall leader in the GT series about to whip by Stuart Hall, and does that with ease. There was a change for fifth place in the GT series, though, on that lap, with Matthias Lizowski getting back in front of Charles Espenlaub. Now, that happened in the region of turn 5 to turn 9. Didn't glimpse it myself, I have to admit, but I reckon somewhere in that middle sector, which is turn 4 up to the approach of turn 10, the Olymp Racing Audi got back ahead of the Mercedes, and that's a really fascinating fight to feast our eyes upon, because Lizowski, Espenlaub, Tim Muller's Audi seem to be relatively evenly matched on this opening stint. As do these three cars, the TCR lead, and it is the Cupra number 101 of Rick Breukers unable to shake Stewie Hall in the Monlau competition Cupra. So two Cupra TCRs and the Audi RS3 of Vincent Rademacher hanging on just about. Antti Burri in the background. And I tell you, Markus Fluch not very far away either in the second of the goals for Lestrup Racing. Marcus impressed me in qualifying earlier on today. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 then in the TCR category within the TCE race. And Harry Hilders is a little bit further down the road for NKPP Racing by Baz Kooten. 4.2 seconds is the gap. But you could throw a blanket over these three cars, Breukers versus Hall and Rademacher, Red Camel, Monlau, AC Motorsport. And remember that the TCE Series race lead is still in the hands of Sam Neary. He's built a margin of 6.4 seconds now up for the Team ABBA Racing car as the TCR machines jostle amongst themselves. On to lap 12, nearly 20 seconds as an advantage now for Matteo Malicelli over Robert Renau's Herbert Motorsport Porsche. The other Herbert car just heading over the line, that's number 93, being driven by Željko Dermic, with Fred Ansel crossing the line as well in the lead of the 991 class. But in the early stage of this race, although 912 was in front at first, Mathieu Ponte, Ansel getting in front and actually more at ease with the track conditions, it would seem, although those Porsche Lorient cars are only separated by, well, last time I checked, half a second. Let's just, yeah, it is. Still just around half a second. 911 ahead of 912, and they are moving away from Stanislav Sidoruk for Duvo Racing, because the 909 is now 20 seconds adrift of that Porsche Lorient Racing battle, the Porsche dealer team, who are based in the west of France, not far from Nantes. So down the hill, into the left-hander now, and towards the lowest part of the circuit. The TCR battle rages on. This is the run through the lingering right-hander that completes the lap then, turn 14. Over the line they go. And Sam Neary now starting to eat up the cars that are at the tail end of the GT series. So Sam Neary overtaking Jimmy De Brucke on that lap, and is now ahead, therefore, of the QSR Racing School Mercedes. Also a change for third, with Leo Weiss in the GT series, now ahead of Max Edelhoff. So the Wochenspiegel team Monchau Ferrari making it 2 488s in the top 3 of GT. Leo wasting no time at all, getting ahead of fellow young racer Max Edelhoff. Olymp Racing, Matthias Lizowski, probably setting his sights on Max Edelhoff next then, see if he can reel in that car. There's a gap of about 3 seconds between the two Audis that are running 4th and 5th. Dermich over the line. Still no change between the TCR leaders, and this is going to be pretty tricky for Leo Weiss to pick his way through. Goes to the outside of Vincent Rademacher, and Rademacher well used to the faster GT cars coming through and having to make space for them. Was just keeping to his line, as the slower cars are instructed to do, and allow the faster car to find the track space to get by, which Leo Weiss wasted no time in doing. Everybody seems rather comfortable down at Scuderia Praha. This is a great opening stint for Matteo Malicelli.
I was going to say, why wouldn't it be?
Yeah,
at the moment.
21 seconds, very nearly, leading the way.
So that's 3 seconds he's got since I handed it over to you.
There you go. All right, we are talking an A6 Pro car versus A6 AM, 2nd, 3rd and 4th.
With a pro driver as well, of course.
Yeah, exactly. Malicelli is the pro bit of that pro lineup, with Josef Kral the silver rating as far as the FIA are concerned. Of course, 24H series value people on a slightly different measuring scale, i.e. pro, semi-pro and AM. So Yuri Pisaric being the AM driver, Josef Kral semi-pro, and Malicelli the pro. And whatever problems they might have had in free practice and in qualifying, getting tyre temperature to the desired level, and also trying to get the rotation of the car down to a minimum, well, that seems to have been solved, certainly as far as the Ferrari is concerned. And these TCRs look a little bit more stable now as well. Maybe they're happier with a fuller fuel load on board. And heading now down towards turn 3 goes the fight for the TCR battle. And we didn't see it, but Stuart Hall is now ahead, and Rick Broekers losing another spot to Vincent Rademacher there, slotting through with the Audi at turn 3. So the AC Motorsport car up to 2nd position in TCR. That's 3rd place in the TCE series. And Broekers, who started so well, now potentially struggling. So what happened with the 101?
Well, it looked like he was doing all right. Might have been slightly balked by one of the GT cars that he was catching. Defended really very, very hard indeed going down the hill, but Stewie Hall just managed to make the gap, and that actually compromised the pair of them, Johnny, and that's how the 188 of Rademacher had to go through, had got to go through. That was some stout defence from Broekers, but Stewie Hall was not to be denied. Right over on the dirty side of the circuit, and Stuart Hall down the inside, turn 5 and 6, I think, there, and did a pretty good job. Actually, did a very good job, yeah.
And now the question is, how much was Brokers holding up Stewie Hall, if at all, or Hall's trying to get between a couple of GT cars in the braking area there? That was crazy. But clearly that TCR car with a slight issue then with the GT cars around it. Herbert Motorsport number 93 looking a little slower, but Jelko Dermich in that crew getting more and more used to a new team and the latest spec of 911 Porsche, so I don't think there is a drama there. Meanwhile, 4th place in the GT series up for grabs, certainly as far as Mateusz Lizowski is concerned. Remember, this is the car that started on the front row. They stick a lap on Sam Neary's ABBA Racing BMW, and the door's left open by Max Edelhoff, although he's trying to shut it desperately at turn 3, and does just about drift across the nose there of Lizowski to hold back the pole. But Edelhoff got his hands full with Mateusz Lizowski, who knows this track possibly a little bit more than young Max. He will have done more laps around it, and they're virtually neck and neck, these two new spec Audi R8s. The front axle of Lizowski's car virtually level with Edelhoff's, and again through the next left-hander. They're heading towards the lowest point on the circuit now, so this is the short run between 7 and 8, and surely now a couple of wheels on the grass, but the other Hankook tyres stayed on the track and the right side of the white line, and Lizowski takes a place. That's 4th position, and Mateusz Lizowski now, I reckon, is going to disappear up the road away from Max Edelhoff to try and reel in Leo Weiss. So Bohemia Energy Racing with Scuderia Praha in control of this race, and Matteo Malicelli, having started like a scolded cat, is maybe just starting to drive within himself a little bit now, because the gap stayed at 21 seconds. Doesn't need to be high risk from this point on, although still struggling to get the car turned in through the second bit of turn 1 there, I noticed, then through the flat-out kink at 2, and you start to climb on the approach to 3 and 4, and then turns 5, 6, 7 and 8 become the downhill section all the way down to turn 10. The 88 Audi being driven by Tim Muller in this opening stint.
That was the pole-sitting car.
Followed by Manuel Zumstein. I think Tim Muller will hold his hands up, though, to say that he's not got the speed of Markus Winkelhock, who put that car on pole position. But Tim Muller has driven a Mercedes already this year with Tom Onslow Cole and Valentin Pierberg. That was 2 rounds ago in Italy for the Mugello 12-hour. And sadly, that car didn't make the end of Friday on that instance. But the 88 has great form in the championship already. But a reminder of what happened earlier on, when first of all there was sort of incidental, maybe accidental contact, and then a right old shove, in fact 2 of them, which seemed to come more from the 88 than the 8, because
yes,
that car was well out of line if you compare that to the Ferrari that it should have been immediately ahead of, and poor old Mateusz Lizowski was trying to get out of that bit of bar brawl, and further and further over to the left side of the circuit. Anyway, being evaluated, and the 88 now running in 7th position. Jelko Dermich, far from any concern about the 93 Herbert Motorsport pace, actually got ahead of Frederick Ansel on that lap, and at the end of the lap, confirmation that Lizowski was able to get ahead of Max Edelhoff after several attempts at that overtake. So the order is Ferrari, Porsche, Ferrari, Audi. In fact, 2 R8s, 4th and 5th there. The best of the Mercedes is the CP Racing entry, 6th position for Charles Espenlau. In the 991 class, the Porsche Laurent cars are in the same order, 911 ahead of 912. And in GT4, it's still Thomas Enger for RTR Projects. The 101 car offering about the same sort of straight line speed as the Jimmy DeBroca driven QSR Racing Score Mercedes, I noticed there. So that was a TCR almost catching up a GT4 car on the straight. GT4, well, I would imagine offering a bit more grunt on the longer straights torque out of the slower speed and medium speed corners for the TCRs. Very impressive, nevertheless, as Sam Neary has in his sights a couple of GT cars. I think they just lapped Sam, actually, in the Team ABBA Racing BMW M3, and are now starting to edge away. Very wide indeed through the second bit of turn 1 for Tim Muller. That might have been Manuel Zumstein's opportunity in the Mercedes, but he wasn't quite on the tailpipes sufficiently to take the place. So over the rise and then downhill as they approach turn 3. The 7th place car in the GT series remains Tim Muller from pole position. A6 Pro cars 1st and 4th, A6 AM 2nd, 3rd, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th and 9th places overall. As the Baz Kooten run, NKPP Cupra turns right at turn 1, and driving that, well, one car that's not actually involved in this long line of TCRs, which is the Harry Hilders 175. He is trying to close down Marcus Fluch, but that was a pretty slow lap last time around for Harry Hilders. So the gap's going the wrong way, i.e. the Lestrop Racing Golf is opening the gap up to the Cupra. However, the only diesel-powered car in the field, after early problems, has now made its way back to the pits, not under its own steam, though.
Yeah, and I think certainly under second-class delivery, because it's taken them nearly half an hour to get this car back. Now, it looks quite clean. I'm going to have to grab CJ, because there's a bit of a telltale issue at the front here of a liquid. And the liquid is very, very black oil. So that is a failure of engine part somewhere, or oil staying in the engine.
That was Bradley. He'd have had that tasted by now.
Yeah, and he'd be going to A&E. So, yeah, that is engine oil. Even I can tell that. And that car has an interface that shouldn't be happening with oil on the floor. And it wasn't crashed. And you can see it's totally clean. But interesting to see when they get the bits off what's actually gone. Is it serious or just something like an oil cap falling off?
Thank you, Nick. Zumstein with a bit of a look at the inside there of Tim Muller, but thinks better of it. He's been following Tim for a fair while now, so should have worked out where the Mercedes is a bit quicker than the Audi. I think Zumstein's lines are generally tidier than Tim Muller as well. Right on the apex was Manuel that time as they headed through turn 1, which is labelled as one long corner, although you can approach it as a couple of separate apices. Manuel is the older brother of Adrian, and Philip also driving this weekend, their father. As Stewie Hall's car's now being asked to respect the track limits, particularly at 10, and there's an early problem for the Gabriela Jilkova at KTM. Now, I said she was going really well, Nick, but this looks like a mechanical problem.
Came in slow, had a quick shufty, and they've pushed it back into the pits. Immediately, the front clamshell is open. The rear clamshell, which is the engine cover, is up and away. They are having a good old shufty about. Let's see if we get an idea. I think it looks like it's gear selection issues, yeah. It's definitely gear selection problems, whether that's clutch, actuator or electronics is that terrible thing they have to find out. Gabriella grabbing various gears, and now they think they might push it back out again. Nope, they're going to put a computer in. So this is going to be in for a plug-in. What's going on? Why isn't it changing gear session, Johnny?
Okay, thank you for that. When we were talking about balance of performance between the KTMs and the other cars in GT4, I thought that the KTM's not always been reliable, so it might actually be self-policing. It's faster on a single lap, but the BMWs and the Aston might actually last a bit longer in the race.
I had exactly the same thought, Johnny, but I think...
Not sure what's the matter with Paul's mic there. We'll give that a bit of a tap and see if that's okay. Try now, Paul.
I think... Oh, maybe it was that. I think it was largely that...
No, we can't use that at the moment. We'll
got a loose connection.
No, I think we might need another headset for Paul. We'll see if we can get on that for a moment. Jippy?
Okay. Matteo Melicelli is still leading by 29 seconds now. This is lap 19, so has found a further 9 seconds of a lead since we were last talking about it. Robert Renauer for Herbert Motorsport with no immediate answer. I think he's more concentrated actually on Leo Weiss behind him, the 22 Ferrari for Wochenspiegel Team Monschau. because there's a gap of about 5 seconds there in order to try and nurse. And the last time around, actually, Leo Weiss was a little bit quicker than Renauer, half a second. So that gap might start to come down. In the TCR battle, Antti Burri definitely now with Rick Brokers. So the Finn had a little cheeky look at the inside. Brokers nowhere near the apex there at turn 1. That's going to open the door coming out of turn 2, but the track now goes left through the kink, and now a drag race all the way down to the inside line. But I think the Golf's got the superior straight line speed. It has. Dangerous stuff this from Burri, late on the brakes. He's not going to turn in sensibly. This is a 12-hour race after all.
He's got him now, though, on the right-hander of turn 3. He's going to go down east. I think that 101 car has got a problem, whether it's tyre problem or engine problem, I'm not sure. But I've never seen Rick Breukers missed so many apeces in a race before, never mind in a
Spa, I think.
Either tyres or the shock absorbers, springs or something like that.
Well, don't forget that's the active ride car.
It's got the trick suspension on it, so it may be that's what's playing up, because they were trying to tune that during practice yesterday, and I thought they got it to a point where they were happy with it.
But you remember Spa at the start of the 12 hours, and Rick disappeared. He must have had probably about a 10-second lead, and then later in the stint they all reeled him in, and I think he was overtaken as well.
Yes, the mere presence of our technical team has fixed Paul's mic without them even having to touch it. That's
Marvellous.
extraordinary. He can't move now, though, Paul.
Right, I will keep my head absolutely still from now on.
Right, okay. Seems reasonable.
And hopefully we now have an internet connection which will enable me to keep track of what's going on in the race for the remaining 2.25 hours. Apologies for my silence earlier on, but we had a few issues that I was dealing with. Have you told everybody that there has been a time penalty for the Lorient Porsche 912 for exceeding track limits?
No.
So that's the first track limits penalty. We've had lots of warnings.
How much time penalty?
It doesn't tell me on the screen, I'm afraid. Merely that there will be a time penalty. I think it's 10 seconds for a track limit violation. News from the pits, Nick Damon.
And outside the 101, Rick Hamill's Jordan Pitt just had a chat with the man who signs the checks, Ivo Breukers, and it is a case that Rick Breukers has just lost the tyres, despite them being a new set. The 676 Synchro Motorsport, who are sharing the garage, were having a quite in-depth chat that I interrupted with him, discussing about what's happening with the tyres. But basically, yeah, the 101 Rick Hamill's perhaps went too hard, too fast, and has burnt the tyres up. Just to finish one other story, the 226 KTM, that left the pit. It seemed to have that situation where the gearbox sensor had lost where it was on the wheel sensor. So they actually had to very slowly rotate the wheels whilst the computer was connected to get back the base setting again. Once it done that, bang, 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 off it went.
Simple as that. Well, at least they'll know what to do if they encounter that problem in the next stint, but it has put the 226 KTM quite a bit further down now after Gabriele was having a good battle with Nico Vidonk in the early stages. Gabriela Jilkova, the Czech driver, rejoining in 29th position and 6th in GT4. The CP Racing Mercedes heading around turn 1 and now venturing onto another lap. Charles Espenlaub, this opening stint for the American driver, and on to lap 21 then go the leaders in the GT series. Thomas Enger heading into that sort of area as well. Meanwhile, the Aston Martin right now with the BMW from Schenker Motorsport. So Richard Gonda in the M4, Nico Verdonk starting the Pro Sport Performance Aston Martin. This is for 3rd and 4th in GT4. KTM still leading, but doesn't have its rear gunner now from RTR Project, so it's got a couple of M4s trying to hunt it down. Best part of 20 seconds to find for the first of those BMWs, though, Thomas Jaeger, ahead of the sister car of Richard Gonda, and it's about 5 seconds separating them. Matteo Malicelli's progress through the field, considering he's now at the front, but what I mean is lapping the field, is going pretty well, because he's now caught up with number 93, which is the second of the Herbert Porsches, Željko Dermić, being lapped right now, just before turn 1. That means everyone up to 9th place has been lapped.
Exactly so, and of course that is more significant perhaps than being lapping and how many cars you got on the lead lap usually is, because at the end of 3 hours, if you're on the lead lap, basically whatever the gap is gets squashed right up to nothing at all, and if you're not on the lead lap, you're never going to be able to get that time back unless you can make up time in the closing 9 hours of the race. So yes, I mean, Malucelli's progress is a concern for everybody else in A6, but of course I suppose this is something worth bearing in mind. There is only one other A6 Pro class car, and the A6 AM cars will be closed up into their own little section once the part 2 is set up tomorrow, based on the clever system they have of allocating credit laps to some of those cars who have lost out as a result of having the leader between them and the rest of the class. Currently, the only cars that I have that are not on the same lap as the class leader are the 2 pit callers we've had, the 869 BMW, the Hoffa racing car, and the Crossbow that Gabriele Gilkova was driving and still is driving through that pit stop, so Gabriele is still at the wheel there.
Neck and neck in TCR, with the 107 car about to be overtaken by Vincent Rademacher. Rademacher getting a much better run on Stewie Hall, and does Rademacher now look to be the best thinking driver in terms of the fact that he didn't go hell for leather straight away, and does have a bit of Hankook rubber left on the tyres beneath him, because yeah, the Audi's now ahead of the best of the Cupras. So Rick Broekers dropping away during this stint, maybe at a point where Stewie Hall's doing the same, and Rademacher up to the leader in the TCR category and 2nd place in the TCE race. Sam Neary doesn't seem to be having the same sort of tyre problems as the TCRs behind then, and that Team ABBA Racing BMW SP3 car well ahead of the TCR battle behind. But Vincent Rademacher confirmed as the new TCR leader as they go across the line, ahead of Hall, ahead of Antibury, and Rick Broekers down the 2:16. Oh, that's about right for everybody else, actually. 2:16.2. Rick's marginally faster than Antibury, who has also got ahead. So Rick's running in 4th position now, and will need to be wary of Marcus Fluch in the Lestrup Racing Golf, car 110, because Fluch, again, might have a bit more tyre at his disposal at this stage in the stint. Harry Hilders is quite a bit further down the track. Jimmy De Broca and Harry Hilders, though, have exchanged places in the last couple of circuits. Rolf Redding for TTC Racing in the only Seat in the entry is 26th position. That's another TCR car. But Rick Broekers now having to probably deal with these tyres for, what are we doing? We've done nearly an hour. The TCRs do 2 hours, Paul, on a tank of fuel.
Not as much as that, an hour and a half.
Okay, but the drive time's 2 hours.
The drive time is 2 hours.
So that's awkward. Because do you change drivers at an hour and a half, or do you put that... Well, I suppose you don't want to come in for a second stop. So if you're
but
the car won't do an hour, 2 hours. That's the point.
No, so
Aston Martin virtually neck and neck there with the Schenker Motorsport car. Nico Verdonk not able to get through, but certainly hassling Richard Gonda into a mistake. Out of turn 1 they go, virtually touching one another as they're now out of the kink at 2 and over the rise, jinking out of line again. Nico Verdonk to have a little bit of a look. I don't think he was fully committed about an overtake that time around, though, into 3 and 4, and braking at basically the same point into turn 4 as they then start to descend. But yes, that's a case of the fuel mileage dictating when you stop rather than the drive time. In the GT category, slightly neater in that a GT3 car will do an hour or so, maybe a little bit longer than an hour, but you can make that into a 2-hour stint fairly comfortably. The blue flags are being waved this time for some of the TCR traffic, so getting through Fred Ansel in the 991 leading car, the 991 class leading car, which also race number 911. and Mathieu Ponte, which has had a penalty in the opening stages of the race for track limits. 9.12 is in second position. They're separated by 6 seconds. Stanislav Sidoruk for Duvo Racing in third position in the 991 class, and Dominic Bastien just losing touch with those in his category, having allowed Thomas Enger through. Leo Weiss in the Ferrari, choosing that moment to get ahead of the Rick Roker's Cupra. Now, what about Leo Weiss and how much time he's going to find? It's about 5 seconds on Robert Renauer. So Weiss is third, Renauer is second. Mateusz Lizowski trying his best to reel them in. He wasn't faster than the Ferrari on the last lap, though. And they're in about the 2:08s, but nobody can match the pace of Matteo Malicelli, who is consistently doing 2:06s, 2:07s. And for that reason, he now has a lead of nearly 37 seconds over everybody else in this race. And next question is, has he lapped anybody else since we last checked? Manuel Zumstein will be the car, I think, just ahead of him, as an early pit caller from the TCR field is now with Nick Damon.
Yeah, it's the Hyundai, the only Hyundai in the race, the Danish run car, coming in for a new set of front tyres. No driver change, just a clean windscreen set of front tyres. They've got running 56 minutes, including some code 60. So it's likely perhaps they've also routed the tyres. They're not looking at all at the rear end. The rear end, of course, as Martin Haven famously says, is just there to keep the rear of the car off the ground. And the exhaust off the ground as well, of course. But yeah, the long-winded 5-wheel nut stud has been done. The windscreen has clearly got a fantastic stone strike in the middle of that windscreen, the 130. That's definitely going to need to go and see Auto Glass outside the office on Monday. Now, they haven't actually closed the fuel cap, even though that's not a fuel cap, of course. That's actually where the air jacks go. Is it going to dive to the right? And the answer to that is no. So it's not taking fuel either, and it's driven out with its fuel cap that's not a fuel cap, but still a cap that's open.
Right, I think I got that. Just about. Right, let's take a look at the circuit from the perspective of Thomas Enger in the 13th crossbar through turn 1. 224 RTR Projects guy, he knows his way around it. I bet he's got his eyes closed at the moment. He won't actually need to look where he's going. 5th gear underneath the advertising bridge that isn't being used at the moment. Into turn 2, down to 3rd gear. Down to 2nd gear, actually. Snatched that really late. Trying to get to the apex of turn 2, didn't quite make it. He's better and closer to the curb at turn 3, which was taken in 3rd. Over the top of the brow, heading down towards turn 4. Another right-hander. He's all the way across the left-hand side of the road. Just snatches 5th, and then a straight down to 2nd gear as he tries to tuck the front end of that crossbar in. A little bit of opposite lock as the back end broke away between 5 and 6. Now into the long left-hander at 7, and again you're using 2 apexes there. Apeces there. 7. This will be down to 2nd again as you try. Everybody fighting to get the front end of the cars in. Through the right-hander at 8, and the road dropping away on the exit there. He'll use a bit of the curb and some of the AstroTurf, and does up through the gears. 4th over the top of the rise. Now dropping down to 9. Does he hit 6th gear? I don't think he will. 4th, 3rd, 2nd, balance it in. Through 10 at the bottom of the hill now and starting to climb. 11 is a left then into 12, which is a right-hander. Takes a lot more curb at 11, but keeps the car at the left hand of the road because the right-hander at 12, you can use the hill to straight you up there. He's absolutely tussling with this car, trying to keep it online. Tries to go past one of the Cupras into the last chicane. He was side by side with him for a very long time, and the Cupra gave way for him through the final corner and back onto the start-finish straight to do it all again. But what I deduce from that lap with Thomas Enger is it's treacherous out there. It could not be any more tricky if it was greasy or wet. That's an extraordinary look inside the car. If you've not watching the stream at the moment, it is available around the world. There's no blocks, breaks or frees required. We'll do our best to describe in audio terms for those of you listening on Radio Show Limited, but that is absolutely extraordinary, Johnny Palmer, to see how hard Thomas, now he's not hanging about, he's leading the class, and that last lap was a 2:14.5, but that's against a best lap of a 2:13.9, so that's 1.5 seconds only away from his best time. His theoretical best time, by the way, is a 2:12.0, so he's dropped a second and a half. Malicelli, last time around, from his best time, dropped 4 seconds, nearly 5 seconds from his best time. So this is how hard it is out there with the cars developing, and we've had, what, an hour of the race?
Yeah, some of that, I think, is the Italian backing off a little bit, realising he's got a 40-plus second lead now on Robert Renauer, so it doesn't need to be high-risk, high-stakes stint any longer. I think it was at first to establish a lead, and now he's just sort of resting on that 40 seconds, really. I mean, they would dearly like to have overnight a full lap's advantage, and he'll push for that, but bear in mind he's got to be 2 minutes 5, maybe 2 minutes 10 as a marker over everybody else. That might be too much of an ask, depending on driver changes. They'll have to get one other driver in to all of these cars before the end of today, because there is a 2-hour drive limit for anyone that started this race. So you can run up to 120 minutes, but by that point you need to switch over to one of your fellow co-drivers.
We are now an hour into the race, and it's Bohemia Energy Racing with Scuderia Praha who lead by an impressive 41 seconds from Porsche in second place. That's the Herbeth 91 car. They have got about 5 seconds on the Ferrari in third, which is from Wochenspiegel, Team Monschau. Then it's Olymp back in the championship. They're another 4 seconds further back. As far as the top 10's concerned, they're all A6 cars, except 10th position. Porsche Lorient Racing has held its position in the top 10, and the number 911 now leads the 991 Cup category. If we look at GT4, it is Thomas Enger who leads in 13th position in the RTR Project KTM Crossbow from the BMW. The Hoffa Racing by Bonk Motorsport in second place. And between those two cars, there are round about 45 seconds between first and second in GT4. So problems for that KTM Crossbow that had led the 226 is dropped down in the GT4 category. So that is your GT standings after 1 hour, and we've got 2 more hours to go. We're live from trackside here at Brno with the TCE standings. Team ABBA Racing, Sam Neri took the lead relatively early on and has cleared out from the... In fact, he's just come into the pits. So he will give up that lead that he had built up, and that will go back to AC Motorsport, who lead TCR. The rest of the top 10, great news. 676, the Honda Civic. Number 676 is in 9th position and leads A3. That's good news for those guys. Alan James started that car, and it is the Hoffa Racing, Bonk Motorsport, and Vinca Tuning cars. The BMW was the car that caused our first code 60, and that happened very early on indeed when that came to a halt. Looked like engine oil, very thick black engine oil leaking out of the bottom of the car. So there's how they stand in both of the categories. After 1 hour, we've now got just under 2 hours still to run tonight, today rather, before we stop the race tonight, and then we'll have another 9 hours tomorrow. We're live from trackside here at Brno.
1 hour of racing already, and into the pits on that hour has come the number 334. That's the Aber Commercials BMW that leads the TCE race. Now I think that Sam Neary has brought that car in well ahead of schedule. He's limped out of the car and nobody was ready to take over the car. So Dad, Richard Neary, has hurriedly got his helmet on and he's gotten into the car. There's nothing else happened to the car. We haven't changed tyres. None of the team was ready for this, so we'll grab a word with Sam and see what's going on. I would think, looking at the way the young man got out of the car, that he's had a cramp in his right leg. I could tell that's his throttle and brake foot, I would imagine. Now whether we've got a problem with the gearbox. Richard Neary at the wheel of the car now, just clicking the paddle shift. It's in reverse, the car's in reverse, and it doesn't look like it's coming out of reverse. He's tried to let the clutch out a couple of times. The car's gone backwards ever so slightly, so the car looks like it's stuck in reverse. Shane Ferns, crew chief, or one of the crew members I should say, gets into the passenger side of the car. Now we're trying to rock the car. Gearbox issues with the 334 definitely is the problem here. Sam Neary has disappeared out the back, so we'll see exactly what the issue is that's brought that car in when the dust has settled, because the dust very much has not settled down here in the Aber Commercials pit.
Right, Joe, thank you very much indeed. I'm guessing that car is either sequential or paddle shift nowadays.
Paddle shift, yeah.
So it'll be brake foot, it'll be throttle foot rather, because it'll be left foot braking, I would think, in that car.
It was interesting though, watching the TV pictures that we've got here, John and Joe, Richard Neary, as you rightly said, getting into the car but not having his gloves on. So he's trying to find a gear, but doing so, obviously not being ready to go straight out once he's done it. You've got far better sensitivity with the switches and things there, but obviously a problem for the Aber Commercials BMW there in the gearbox stroke drivetrain area. Desperately bad news, and losing places, of course, all the time now in the TCE division, which the car was going so well in.
Meanwhile, Aston.
Yeah, battle going on for the GT4 lead of the race.
Well, Aston number 1 sitting in 4th position at the moment and 16th overall, and has just swapped places.
Correct, with Richard
Gonda in the BMW. That was at the late part of the lap, and as they go past us and across the line, it was the grey, white and red Aston that has gone through and into the lead of, into 3rd position in that class. Aston looking very poised, actually, compared to a lot of the cars that are out there at the moment.
And into the pits for routine pit stop, the number 93 Herbert Motorsport Porsche, and that is Zeljko Drumic, bringing the car into the pits for its first routine pit stop with just over an hour of the race elapsed. Meanwhile, in the TCE division, it's now Antti Buuri leading Vincent Rademacher, but the wise head on the shoulders. Vincent looking after his tyres, wanting to go as far as he possibly can on his tank of fuel. So the BMW still in the pits as Zeljko coming out of the pits in the Herbert Porsche, the 93 Herbert Porsche. Got another pit caller coming in towards you, Joe, and it's one of the 2 KTMs. Is it Gabriella again? Yes, it is. So Gabriella with the 226 RTX, Gabriella Vilkova, KTM Crossbow, she's coming into the pits. That car had its problems earlier on. Looks like there's still further problems for the GT4 contender, the Crossbow. And it's with Joe Bradley now.
Yeah, that's got a problem, Paul. The car's done the usual sort of go off at 45 degrees so that the team can then push the car back into the garage. That's happening a little bit further up the pits. The clamshell door, roof, call it what you will, is opened. So a problem problem with the 226, which we'll investigate in a moment. Richard Neary's now out of the 334 BMW. Might be able to grab a word with him. He's definitely got a gearbox issue. Shakes his head. A little bit despondent, I would think. Sort of guy who's going to get his hands dirty with a problem. So that was definitely unscheduled by the looks of what I saw.
It was show, yeah. The car started pre-selecting gears that we're not asking it for.
Okay, and so the earlier issue with the drive shaft, which we thought was a gearbox, was nothing to do with the gearbox whatsoever, I take it. It's not a culmination of things.
No, I don't think so. Earlier it was a drive shaft failure. This is probably a proximity sensor or something.
Something silly like that, like a 15 quid bar.
It's saying the car's in reverse, and clearly it's not, because we're going that way.
Yeah, that's a shame, mate. I'm not going to say anything more. You're going to get your hands dirty now, I would imagine.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah. Thanks, Richard. Despondent there. Bad news for the ABBA Commercials team, because they were leading TCE. It couldn't have happened at a worse time.
I do like the logic, though. He was right. It definitely wasn't in reverse because it was going forward.
Most of the time, certainly. I think the great thing, I mean, Joe jokingly saying to Richard, going to get his hands dirty, absolutely dead serious. Richard is one of the most hands-on team managers you would ever meet. I've actually been in a garage with him whilst he's been taking oil filters apart and showing how little bits of debris are being caught by that filter. So certainly great to watch. Good battle on the track. Between Tim Muller in the 7th place Audi, the car collection car number 88, and Manuel Zumstein in the MDC Sports Mercedes. That's 7th and 8th places, separated by nothing at all as they head behind the trees and out across the line. That's behind Matteo Malicelli, still leading the race. 45 seconds is his gap, first to second, and it's the way it's going, actually. He could get a lap of a lead on the rest of the field before the end of the race. Into the pits now is the 101 Red Camel Jordans.NL Cupra, and this will be to get a decent set of tyres on the car for Rick Breukers. Joe Bradley will tell us whether or not there has been a change of driver.
No, there hasn't. Rick stayed in the car. They've changed front tyres. So from pole position down to, what was it, 4th or 5th? What's he been screaming into the radio? I bet he has.
Yes, he did. And then, even then we were very careful on the tires. We were a little bit afraid that the setup was not that good, but we didn't expect it was that bad.
Yeah, I mean, they just went away, didn't they?
Yes. It was getting worse and worse and worse, and now we're losing 8 seconds per lap. He still has 1 hour to go, so it's an easy calculation if it's wise or not. Of course, you hope to be able to do it in under code 60, but that wasn't the case, and we decided to change it.
And was that a brand new set on the car, Evo?
Yeah, of course.
Wow, brand new set. It's one of those things. Is there anything you can do to the car, make an adjustment with the pressure there?
We could higher the pressure in the back a little bit to make the rear end a little bit more loose. But on the suspension in the front, we cannot do nothing.
Okay. All right, leave it to that. Another despondent view of the race from the 101 Cupra, isn't it? That car started on pole position and has just slipped back 8 seconds a lap off the pace. Oh, and by the way, guys, that's the 88 Audi in and out.
They were just in a bit of a battle there with the MDC Sports Mercedes, and the 88 Audi slowing drastically towards the end of the lap just before, and Apps again nowhere near the apex of the last corner, and it must have been a late decision to come into the pits then, because that car was struggling mightily with grip coming onto the penultimate corner before the start-finish line, and dived into the pits as late as they possibly could to give the pit crew, I think, time to try and get ready for them, and that again, that's 32 laps in the books.
Yeah, and I mean that's as many as you really want to do for a single set of tyres. Off onto the gravel goes the Hyundai i30, and is that going to be able to get going again? Car number 130 currently in the hands of Jan Engelbrecht. He's not the sort of person that would normally be driving off into the gravel, but I don't see how he would have got there unless he's had some kind of failure on the car. See if we can work out what happened. I think he may have had a puncture there because the car suddenly
that's
slewing
awful.
to the right.
Awful.
And I just wonder if that car had a puncture, and that's what sent him off into the side. And this is going to be potentially bad news for the Breukers family, because if the marshals can't get this car going, then we won't be able to handle it with a local yellow, and then we'll have to go code 60. But hats off to the marshals, who necessarily in the first flush of youth, but they've got the car going. But only for Jan Engelbrecht to bury it still deeper in the gravel, John.
There's a sport a rescue vehicle there, which is a Jeep Cherokee of a certain vintage. I wonder if they got those from the Nürburgring when they finished with them. Actually, they were what we'd now call Cherokee Sports, the old Cherokee Sports, the square ones. That was
still
I'm
local
not
yellow.
He's going to dig himself in if he tries to do much more. So
he needs Quattro, doesn't he?
Yes. Well, fortunately, the Jeep has got what they call Quadra-Track. They've got all-wheel drive, and that. Do you know what? That's pretty impressive, because even with an all-wheel drive car, dry gravel traps are actually something you don't want to be in, and that Jeep that's got to be 20 years old. That Grand Cherokee.
He hasn't tried to pull away towing a car yet, so don't speak too soon.
It's a very good point. Joe Bradley?
Yeah, lead Ferrari's in.
And out.
Malicelli out. Just going to see, it is Yuri Pizarich who's taking the wheel of the car.
And everybody else coming in as well, Joe. You're going to have them all in your lap at one time.
Yeah, I'm going to be busy.
They're expecting a code 60. This is why they're coming in now, because they're
Second place, Paul from TCE in the 188 Audi.
Yeah. The 91 Porsche is in, the 22 Ferrari is in, the number 8 Audi is in, and so you've got the top 4 cars all in the pit lane. We've also got the 85 CP Racing Mercedes coming in, the Aston Martin number 1 is in, and the number 4 Mercedes, the MDC Sports Mercedes, which Manuel Stumstein was having that little battle with a moment ago. But we're not going code 60 yet, so...
No, really. The number 8 All-In Powdy is in. You have to get a word with Matthews and see what was going on in that start lap, the rolling lap, that is. They're changing driver and tyres in the number 8 Audi, in from 4th place. The 3rd place Porsche of the Herbert team have just rolled by. It's done its driver change and tyre change. It's gone into the fuel station now. So, as you said, Paul, very, very busy indeed down here.
The Hyundai, which I suggested might have had a puncture, it certainly didn't have a puncture. I think he might have just lost it under braking, John.
Might have snatched a wheel when he downshifted.
Something like that.
Actually, which shouldn't happen because it's got an auto blip, so maybe the auto blip's not working.
It certainly had all 4 tyres inflated, but it was a strange little off where Jan Engelbrecht suddenly seemed to lose control and veer off to the right. And but he's got going again now, and that has been entirely covered with local yellows, not a code 60. So no particular advantage or disadvantage for anybody, except for the fact that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cars in the refueling area. And how many did you tell us there were? You were 8 and 1 diesel. So there's 8 petrol and 1 diesel. So it's now we get the 9th car coming in, and it's the Aston Martin. 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, so the 9th car, the Aston Martin, has come into the pit lane and is having to stand there, sit there, waiting for a refueling point to come available.
At RSL_studio. And if you want to get in touch with us, Sarah Rigby enjoying the race here at BRNO. Great on board from Enger Racing earlier in the 224 RTR Project Crossbow. All that lush carbon fibre glinting in the sunlight. She said, how very northern of you. I thought lush was a northeast word. Can't disagree with you, mine, Sarah. Looks fantastic. Edelhoff leads in the 34 Kirchhoff-sponsored team car collection. Yuri Pizarich back out on the racetrack, but of course he owes us a pit stop, Johnny.
No, he's had his pit stop. Oh, you mean Max Edelhoff?
Edelhoff,
yes.
Yeah. And Edelhoff still has a 10-second penalty to serve
because of jumping the start. So
correct.
yes, last car to win A6 AM and win the overall race with an A6 AM car was the 34 car collection car. Nearly wasn't after Spa.
Hyundai going slowly.
That's the car that was in the gravel and is on his way back.
Let's have a look around that team Eversolo, or the Eversolo sponsored car. He's got a problem at the back. There's something not right. Loose wheel, maybe? Has he had a pit stop? That car? Yes, he has, yeah. I wonder if he's got a loose wheel. But certainly that car is moving around, even at slow speed, Johnny Palmer.
It was 7 laps ago, the pit stop.
All right,
so
okay.
Strange. I just wonder whether something on the suspension has gone, maybe a toe link, or maybe just slightly bent. We don't know whether it's hit anybody else, or indeed whacked a curb out of our viewpoint.
Didn't seem to when it had its incident. We had a replay of the incident, but it may have had some contact. It may have had contact earlier in the race, and that was a result. Yes.
Stefan Aust going pretty rapidly in the Herbert Motorsport Porsche now, or certainly compared to Željko Dermic, who was at the wheel of that white Herbert Motorsport Porsche for the opening stint, because Stefan starting to set green sector times for Porsche number 93. That car has also made a stop in anticipation of us going caution, which wasn't necessary in the end. So Max Edelhoff leading the way now from Jiri Pisaric. But of course the 34 Audi hasn't made a stop yet, and the Ferrari behind has. Unsurprisingly, the Ferrari that was driven by Matteo Malicelli for the opening stint continues in the race, now a decent chunk ahead of everybody else. But let's see whether, as they cycle through, the other drivers, the other cars in this race cycle through, perhaps some quicker drivers, whether that gap can start to be dented at all. Meanwhile, the 409 Genkier Motorsport BMW M4 still being driven by Richard Gonda, the man from Slovakia, running in 12th position in quite a bit of traffic. That BMW should be able to make quick work of certainly car 101, very good, because they are in different races effectively. The BMW M4, which is entered by the Brno squad, Genkier, are a GT series entry, whereas obviously the TCR is in the TCE race. Heading through turn 4, there goes the Red Camels Cupra. So that car is currently 4th in the TCR ranks, and was there a change at the sharp end there? Yes, that's actually the timing screen just untangling itself then after the recent bout of pit stops. Stanislav Sidoruk, who has pitted his Duvo Racing Porsche Cup car, up to 3rd overall now in the 909 machine. Tim Muller is 4th. Beg your pardon, Stanislav Sidoruk has not pitted, so that's the reason why it's as high up as 3rd position. Tim Muller's car collection Audi has come in for a single stop, and now Daniel Alleman taking charge of the Herbert Motorsport Porsche, the black one, running in 5th position, ahead of Thomas Enger, yet to stop. 4 cars behind the Czech driver, though, have all come in, including the Wochenspiegel Team Monschau Ferrari, and that switch is from Leo Weiss to Jochen Krumbach. Mateusz Lizowski's Olymp Audi is still in the pit lane. Does that mean it's in the fueling area now, or is it still being serviced in the pit lane? Do we get a letter F?
We don't get an F, no.
We don't get an F.
Because it's Brno, we don't get an F. So it stays a P.
It's in fueling.
I see. And the Olymp Racing Audi is in the fueling area. It just feels like that's taken quite a bit longer than the other A6 cars, but we'll find out once we get a pit stop time. It's been in the pits for 7 minutes now. That's not right.
It might have had to queue for fuel, because certainly that's something that the Aston Martin had to do.
Yeah,
I'll go back in a second and just check how full the fueling area was.
But bearing in mind, the last pit stop for the Ferrari from Scuderia Praha took 3.5 minutes, about the same for Tim Muller's orange car collection Audi, and nearly 4 minutes for the Daniel Alleman now driven Herbert Porsche. Yes, that car, once it rejoins, it does in fact rejoin now with Carol Baz at the wheel, and it has been in the pits for 7.5 minutes, so that's cost it the best part of 4 minutes to everybody else, which sadly is a huge margin, and will put it off the lead lap and possibly 2 laps down as a result of that. Anyway, the 8 car rejoining in 13th position at the moment on the screen. We'll see whether that adjusts as more cars flood across the timing line. Thomas Jaeger has been in the pits for a little while now for the Hoffa Racing by Bonk Motorsport BMW. That's a GT4 entry, and been in the pits for nearly 3.5 minutes, which is not as concerning as the 7.5-minute pit stop for car number 8.
Question, Paul. Right Turn Lover has tweeted in at RSL_studio, and he's pretty savvy. He says, I'm presuming the number 34 is in AM. Yes, it is. So therefore it has a bigger fuel allowance. Other cars may have stopped earlier when they can take their full fuel allowance, but the 34 possibly hasn't burned enough fuel yet to actually take their full fuel allowance from a full tank at the start of the race.
Right. The difference is that the 34 is running as an A6 AM Advantage car. Because it has all 3 of its drivers are AM drivers, it can run 50 kilograms lighter, and just get the right page. So it runs 30 kilograms lighter, 50 kilograms lighter, it's right first time. 50 kilograms lighter, and also every time it stops at the fueling station, it can take on 120 litres. Whereas if you're running in the A6 neutral, you can only take on, depending if you're in an Audi and you're a neutral, then you can only take on 100 litres. So it's worth staying out as long as you possibly can, because the fuel tank size is only 120 litres, and you can get all 120 litres into the tank. So for an A6 AM Advantage, it makes a lot more sense for Max Edelhoff to stay out, whereas for the Ferrari, Pisaric, he's running an A6 Pro, so he only gets 95 litres, and therefore it's easier for him to get that in by coming in a little bit earlier. Tim Muller is also in A6 AM, but he's running A6 AM neutral, and so he can only take on 100 litres of fuel. Somewhat long explanation, but it makes a lot of sense for Max Edelhoff to stay out as long as he possibly can.
Down to Joe Bradley, who is back at the Team ABBA BMW, Team ABBA Commercials BMW. Sam Neary, who has had a great first part of the race. It's all gone a bit wrong since then, Joe, but you must be reasonably happy with the start of the race.
Yeah. You've been around motor racing a long time with the family, but when you're in the driver's seat, there's nothing I can say bringing a car in from the lead with a problem. Tell us, how did that manifest?
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. I mean, I got the lead on the second lap, I think, and just extended the gap from there. But we have the gear shifter inside the car melted in the driver's seat, so it was changing gear by itself. And to be honest, I couldn't have done any longer. I've been not been very well after.
Right, so you were really physically exerted there.
Yeah, I've thrown up twice after I got out, and oh yeah, so it was very difficult. So we're currently taking off the flat floor to try and get some more airflow into the car, but it was really hard.
And you're a fit young man, so I wouldn't have stood a chance. And hot enough to melt a sensor in the cockpit of the car, and you were sat in it and you'd know it.
Yeah, it was really hot, and I think I might have bent my foot a little bit as well on the brake pedal. So it was too. I
saw you hobbling out. Is it a left foot brake car or right foot?
A left foot brake car. Yeah, but the flat floor is what's making it really hot, and it's just we can't do any longer, so we need to take it off. And if the times are slow, it doesn't matter. As long as we do longer stints, it'll be better.
Are you still smiling? I suppose you've got to put it down to a big learning curve now that you're a driver, not just a hanger-on.
Yeah, it's a massive learning curve, and that is the hardest stint I've ever done in my life. So hopefully none of them are as hard as that.
So, in the gym next week?
Yeah, definitely. Need to get my cardio up again.
Yeah, absolutely. Well done, mate. Commiserations. Nothing I can say. You brought the car in from a great lead, great drive.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Well done, Sam.
Sam Neary. Tough lad, but still a very hard run out there. I'm not sure people realise, Johnny, just how tough an environment the inside of a closed cockpit racing car is, even in relatively moderate temperatures, air temperature probably isn't that hot out at the moment. It's not falling over hot out there. It's not heat stroke out there, but the effect of the sun through the glass of the car, the effect of the heat of the engine, the brakes, and everything else, the lack of airflow underneath the bottom of the car, as Sam was describing there. That's going to be a pretty tough environment for equipment and, of course, for the carbon-based life form that's in there as well.
Yeah, precisely. That's not the first time we've heard about feet being burned through the race footwear. And when you've got the engine just the other side of the bulkhead, then all that hot air, the hot gases are coming through into a very confined area where your feet are. It's not as confined as a single-seater, but there's not a great deal of room in there. And, of course, it's metal. There'll be metal pedals, I assume, and you're basically putting your feet on hundreds of degrees Celsius every time. And also, that's your pressure pedal as well. So you've got to press as hard as you can to slow the car, and more pressure means more heat. It is not a comfortable experience.
Leader in the pits, Max Edelhoff. Joe Bradley is there.
And Joe, did they change drivers?
I don't think they changed drivers. I certainly saw them change tyres. By the time I made my way up there, I could swear they didn't change drivers. Let's dive in and find out the answer to that. See if I can see a sweaty Max Edelhoff or no one at all.
Well, time spent in the pit lane and the fuel doesn't count against his driving time, but he's only...
Driver change. No
so they've got to bring him in half an hour then?
Yeah, Max is in the car. Max is in the car, guys.
So they've got to bring him in half an hour.
A little under that, but yeah, absolutely right. He will be taking on the full 120 litres, and they're obviously, I mean, to my mind, this is wise, and why the 88 car collection car doesn't have Marcus Winkelhock behind the wheel of it in this part of the race is beyond me, because whichever way you look at it, the Bohemia Energy Ferrari is the favourite. You've got to stay on the lead lap because any gap you have will just be closed up, so you won't lose anything at all to the leader when they restart the race tomorrow. So what they're doing is they're leaving their fastest driver in the car, which is unquestionably Max, for as much of the race as they possibly can. And if that means coming in to do a driver change only stop a little bit later on, then to my way of thinking, that is worth doing. It's not a long pit lane. You're only going down the pit lane at 40 kilometres an hour, and if all you do is even just change the driver without changing, they'll be able to change the tyres actually more quickly than they can change the driver.
Correct.
So change the driver, put a new set of tyres on, send him on his way for the remainder of the 3 hours.
Well, you might as well fuel him. It's not going to get it. But your fuel stop will be less.
Shorter because you can't get the full 120 litres in.
Yeah, and you won't have used it. Yes, exactly. So you'll be able to certainly go to the end for the last hour and have a bit left, I would have thought.
Yeah, well, that's the key thing. You're not allowed to stop. Well, you are allowed to stop in the last 10 minutes, but you'll get a 2-lap penalty if you do. So the idea is not to stop in the last 10 minutes, but to do your last stop just before that if you can.
We've got in the pit lane now the leader in Class A3 in the TCE category, and that is the 676. That is Alan James, who's been in from the start. He's got out now. Dan Wheeler is in the car, so I'm expecting to see the BMW go through. Yes, it has. Oh, no, it hasn't yet. So they are heading to fuel now. 7th in the TCE side of things. Into fuel? Yes, into fuel.
The BMW is 4 laps behind, John.
Yes,
so,
good point.
It's the Hoffer Racing BMW, Nicole Holzer driving. That car having had that's the car that stopped on the circuit, wasn't it? In the... oh no, that's the 240i Racing Cup car, but that had a pit stop early on. Nicole Holzer. So at the moment, Synchro Motorsport has a commanding lead in the A3 class.
Let's go down to Joe Bradley, and we saw in the Indianapolis 500 last weekend at the qualifying and bump day that the whole field was separated by 1.3% over a 4-lap average. We talk about the 1%ers and how you can maximise incremental gains. And Synchro, Joe Bradley, are a team that are looking for that all the time. Don't have the most powerful car, don't have the biggest budget, but they've come up with some ingenious ways of trying to make sure they stay on top in their class.
They really have. And before I show you that piece of kit, I want to show you the tyres that have come off this car. Alan James has just jumped out. Alan, you got your money's worth out of these Hankooks. Just look at that outer edge. Now, that's the outer edge of the tyre. I would expect to see that on the inner edge, but not the outer edge. That's the left front, I take it.
It is the left front, yeah, and we're running 3.5 degrees camber, which is sort of maximum we're supposed to. I don't mind getting a money's worth, but 2 hours something would have been nice, not an hour and a half. So we don't know. Everyone seems to be struggling with the same with this grip. It seems really strange. I don't know what. We're scratching our heads, and maybe that's what it is, and we got to, don't know, look after them a bit better.
And the rear's not being used at all because of the. I can see that by the amount of pickup that we've got on the tyre there. They're just trailing around picking up loose rubber, isn't it? Yeah. Aren't they?
There is so much rubber out there. I don't know whether others have found it, but this year we seem to think there's more rubber being thrown around this year than previously. Whether there's been a compound change or something, we don't know. But we seem to be suffering with that a lot more. Pickup on the rears, even inside. I think inside the rims is collecting up, and that gives us a vibration from the rear. But yeah, that's not ideal after an hour and a half.
Oh, you're going to have to keep an eye on that. Now, Alan, while we're with you, I want to. It's been a while. It's been a while since we showed everybody this. Now, it's a 5-stud wheel. It's not just the centre lock like we see on the GT cars. And it's very time-taking, isn't it? And it's all about shaving fractions of seconds in that pit stop time. This way, the crew member can put 5 nuts on the wheel studs at the same time. And if you turn that handle, it turns all 5 nuts at the same time. It's a really ingenious piece of kit. Did you guys make that, or do you buy that from somewhere?
No, this is our own invention. So we've got a big machine in the factory that puts all 5 wheel nuts on, and we were struggling 2016 with. We were losing our time in the pit stop. We were losing races with our lost time in pit stop. So we went away in the winter of that and then came back in 17. Yeah, it was 17. We won the championship in 17, and when we looked at the difference, we saved all this time in the pit stop due to this. So it was a big up for us, and it's always nice when the guys save 10 seconds in the pit stop. It's a lot easier than trying to gain that out there.
If you lost a second in the pits, it's hard to make it up.
Yeah.
This is a championship-winning piece of kit, that. Great, thanks for talking to us. Hopefully you need to keep an eye on that tyre, though. Thanks, Alan.
Going back to Max Edelhoff, the erstwhile race leader, he's rejoined the race in second place, still on the lead lap, and that's what I was saying is the critical thing. There's actually 6 cars on the lead lap. In 6th place is Thomas Enger, who's yet to make a stop with the crossbow, leading GT4. So Thomas Enger fired up with lots of fuel, hasn't been using as much because he's not allowed to use as much boost, perhaps. But the other point about Max Edelhoff's pit stop, I don't think he took that penalty that he was supposed to take. He went straight to the front of the garage, did the new tyres, and then went off for fueling. So he's not obliged to take it. He has to take it within 2 hours of it being issued, but he's not obliged to take it on his first pit stop. So still waiting for that code 60, I suspect, and taking it under a code 60 if they can. So Edelhoff focusing on the task at hand, which is to stay on the lead lap. Jiri Pisaric in the lead of the race with a lead of just under 30 seconds. Herbert Motorsport, Daniel Allemann has taken over the number 91 car from Robert Renauer. He's a further 40 seconds behind the car collection Audi. 4th is Tim Muller in the 88 car collection Audi, right on the tail of Daniel Allemann. According to the timing screen, so that might be interesting if we can see them. And then Jochen Krumbach is in 5th place in the Wochenspiegel Team Monschau Ferrari. And then the next one back is the KTM crossbow of Thomas Enger 224, which has just been lapped by the race leader Jiri Pisaric. On the subject of penalties, a penalty has been issued to the 978, that's the speed lover Porsche, Dominic Bastian, for overtaking under a yellow flag, and that's a 30-second time penalty, which we'll attempt to spot for you when it happens. The speed lover Porsche 978, currently the class leader of the 991 class, although both of the Lorient Porsches have taken a pit stop, and I'm not sure whether Speed Lover has had a pit stop yet. No, in fact, Dominic Bastian is in the pits at the moment. So he will lose the place because both 911 and 912 took slightly earlier pit stops in the 911 class.
Thomas Enger's up as high as 6th position now overall in his GT4 leading KTM Crossbow. Nearest competitors being the BMW M4 of Shenkir Motorsport, so no huge concerns for the KTM's lead as far as RTR are concerned. It is a little closer as far as the rest of the GT4s are concerned. About half a minute between Gonda and Fischer in the BMW M4s from the Czech squad, and then the Hoffa Racing by Bonk Motorsport entered machine number 50. So 409 and 50 separated by 31 seconds. Akil Rabindra, having taken over the Pro Sport Performance Aston Martin in the last stop, is running in 4th position, and he in turn has got about 36 seconds to try and find to catch up with the second of the BMWs.
5th in GT4 is the QSR Racing School Mercedes 454 that started from the pit. Well, didn't actually start from the pit lane, but had to start from the back of the grid, having had a problem on the reconnaissance lap. Gavin Pickering now at the wheel of the car. He is 2 laps behind the class leader of 4 laps behind the class leader, because that's Thomas Enger, but 2 laps behind the next car up in GT4.
The 226 Crossbow is back out. It was a gearbox compressor. Basically, that's the piece of kit that changes the gear from the driver activating the paddle, but that's been rectified and the car's back out. So I'm not sure exactly how much time that car lost, but it wasn't that much. Paul will tell me different.
He's working that out now.
So fine.
Another warning for track limits. This time it's Carol Bast in the Olymp Racing Audi. This has been intriguing to me so far. The lead at the front of the field is 25 seconds. Max Edelhoff trying to close that down, and he took nearly 2 seconds out of the leader last time around. So this is why they've left Max Edelhoff in the car at this stage, to do an extra half an hour, Paul, to pull that lead back down going into the last hour of today.
I don't think he's got any hope at all of winning the race going into this last half hour today, but all he has to do is just keep the car within contact so that the rest of the drivers can keep up. Pisaric not as quick as Malicelli was earlier on. Just to answer the question that Joe Bradley posed a minute ago, half an hour is the time that the 226 has spent in the pit lane. It's actually still in the pit lane because it's off getting fuel at the moment. That's the Gabriele Dilkova Crossbow, which I would assume has now got a different driver behind the wheel of it. The 226 car having dropped to 29th out of 31 cars, all of which well, actually, probably not all of which are still running, because I'm not quite sure whether or not the ABBA Racing BMW is going to be back out, and I'm pretty sure that the Winkler Tuning BMW, the 666 diesel car, I don't think is going to come back out again.
A best lap of the race for the Honda FK8 from Synchro Motorsport, Swindon-based Synchro Motorsport, out of the factory. 2:23.1 is that car's best lap of the race. So Dan Wheeler taking over from co-driver Alan James, and
best lap in A3 as well.
Best lap in A3 as a class, which this weekend contains 3 cars. Meanwhile, I mean, the laps are still impressive from Max Edelhoff as he tries to whittle down that lead. We are going to see, I reckon, the young German catching Jiri Pisaric, but the downside for him is presumably Matteo Malicelli is going to be put back in the Ferrari. Mind you, does that have to stop again?
Before the end of the race, yes, it will.
Right.
And they will try and make it happen as close as possible to the 10 minutes to go. Yes. The issue that we sometimes have, and we had not at Spa, because that was a 4+8 hour race. At Mugello, you remember, that was a 3+9 hour race. 3 hours is a reasonably easy time to make your pit stop in the last half hour. 4 hours is a much more difficult time to make your pit stop in the last half hour. So what happened at Mugello was that you get everybody coming into the pits in the last half hour, and all of a sudden your carefully hatched plan to make your pit stop as close as you can to the end of the race comes unstuck because everybody else has had the same idea and all the petrol pumps are taken.
Right.
So you have to plan it a little bit and not get caught out with full petrol pump or with all the fuel pumps being taken. Having said that, and it was Nick Damon who pointed out, 8 petrol pumps amongst 31 cars, were down to 29 of them healthy running. It shouldn't be beyond the wit of man to get them all through without having to queue. But still takes a bit of planning. There's nothing you can take for granted in this.
Now, the first car that Max Edelhoff needs to sort of shake is Adrian Zumstein, who is lapping at a reasonable speed. Last time around did a 2:08, Edelhoff a 2:07, so should be able to pull away from that car now and stay focused on Jiri Pisaric in the Ferrari 488. In from second position in the TCE race, though, is the Lestrup Racing Golf, and beg pardon, that car second in TCR, which makes it second in the TCE series because of the dramas for the SP3 BMW, of course. Sam Neary was complicating matters to an extent by being the TCE leader. We are just talking about TCRs, though, for the moment, at the sharp end of the field in the TCE race.
Due to the only other cars in the class being either A3 or having gearbox replacement work done in the pits in the shape of the ABBA BMW. We're an hour and 45 minutes into the race, and Thomas Enger still hasn't pitted. I'm minded briefly of Jean Alesi at Montreal many years ago when he didn't pit at all and ended up running out of fuel. But Enger, says Joe Bradley, is about to. Are they showing any concern? Is it all? You know, Thomas has got enough fuel and he's just going to come in a minute, Joe?
Yeah, they're all ready.
Oh,
New driver, all just been taken out of the cellophane, standing there, brand new Hankook tyres, and team manager standing at the front to stop the car.
Who is the driver getting in?
Stand by. I will go and see if I can see who it is. Nonchalantly. I've been renowned for looking at men in racing suits' crotches, and I'm not really looking at the crotch, I'm looking at the name on their belt. It's Angermeyer that's getting into the car.
Eike Angermeyer, who was the driver that Hindhoff would have had in the car at the beginning of the race.
I tried to put him in very hard.
Because that was where the switch was. But
yes.
Yeah, so he's the only non-Czech in any of the crossbows, either of the crossbows, because the 226 has a fully 5 Czech driver lineup, and the number 224 has 3 Czech drivers and an Austrian, which is as close as you can get. Vienna's only about an hour and a half's drive from Brno. So Eike Angermeyer lined up to drive in the crossbow, but Thomas Enger, is that him going through for another lap? No, that was the other crossbow going through. But quite remarkable fuel economy from these little coupes. Not available to purchase for the road, but you can buy a crossbow open car for the road.
Yes, you can, and there's various stages of tune that you can get on them. The GT4 is the ultimate iteration. I think it's 360 brake. Johnny will look that up immediately. And they're racing their own championship. Because we had them at Misano, didn't we? At Mugello, which I keep trying to make Misano in the same way as I keep trying to make Angermeyer Enger, or Enger Angermeyer at least. And they're a pretty sophisticated little machine, those. The road cars are a brilliant piece of engineering. Carbon fibre chassis, full wishbone, double wishbone suspension, so it is a race car for the road. It's a VAG Audi VW engine, so it's absolutely bulletproof, and it weighs about as much as our carry-on luggage, Johnny. And therefore the power to weight ratio depends on how many pies you've eaten before you get into it. It's a genius concept and beautifully put together. The head of KTM and the man who designed the car were racing in the KTM Challenge in Italy. 978 team manager is to report the race control. You mentioned the penalty for that car, as in comes the 224, Thomas Enger.
Yes, that 978, the car that was penalised for overtaking under a yellow flag. So whether that's to have his card marked or whether he's done something else wrong in the meantime, we'll wait and see what comes up on the screen. But Thomas Enger heading down the pit lane to join Joe Bradley, and he will tell us that Thomas is going to step out looking bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, I would think. Joe will tell us in a moment.
Yeah.
Because he is...
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, he's very fit still. Former Formula One driver. He does, in fact, hop out of the car. He's trying to give the driver taking over from Ackermeyer, he's trying to give him some information. He was right, you know what, he didn't even hit the board that stops the car. Usually you see in pit stops cars crashing into the board with the team crew chief in front of it and having to jump out of the way. Thomas, though, was absolutely on the marks. Brand new rubber coming off the car, and completely different look of the tyres coming off this crossbow. The car, I noticed the front-wheel drive cars coming in with the rear tyres absolutely adorned with massive amounts of pickup because they're not really being used. However, different matter of events in the 224 crossbow. Clamshell lid down, and the car, slight bit of wheel spin as the car pulls away. Back into the race. Give Thomas his helmet off, which he already has, so we may be able to get a word with him, and no doubt he's always a one for a quarters, Thomas, so I'll give you a shout when I've got him.
Loads of stuff taped to the carbon fibre dashboard, I noticed, and during that pit stop, one of the crew looking after the RTR Projects machine, just fiddling around, maybe making sure it was secure or attaching another bit of equipment to that fairly confined cockpit area. Thought then, due to the foreshortening of one of the cameras around this Brno circuit, Ferrari's was about to slam into the side of the Lestrup Racing Golf. Thankfully, the Ferrari was sufficiently ahead to stick another lap on car 110, which is now being driven by Peter Folstrom, who we heard from on the grid. Fifth place then in the category, chasing down the...
In fact, it's just been past. Stefan Perrin in the Audi has just got past him, the 188 car.
Good spot, Paul. So Frenchman Perrin driving for AC Motorsport once again, and racing with Vincent Rademacher, along with, it's James Kay here again.
Yes, he is.
That crew.
Yeah.
So it's the same lineup from Spa.
Correct.
And I think Mugello, actually. So, yeah, place change there to give the 188 AC Motorsport entered Audi 5th position ahead of the Swedish Lestrup Racing crew.
Yes, Rick Breukers, another car that's stayed out or with the same driver. News from the pits, Joe Bradley.
Thomas Enger. Thomas, I'm intrigued. What information were you giving to your teammate there as he handed him the car?
Well, the radio has failed, so I was...
Hang on, Thomas, I'll stop you. I think we have to step out of the garage there, CJ. We're losing my microphone. Oh, we're fine. We're back, are we? Hang on. Plus it's sunshine. Oh, really? I lost myself in my ear. So, Thomas, what was that information you give your teammate?
Well, I was trying to communicate, to show me a board because our radio failed. I don't have a microphone in the car because they have a system that they can listen to you all the time. I'm online all the time. So I can't shout, you know, I don't need to press the button to talk to them. So they hear me.
So it's open all the time?
Sorry?
So the line is open all the time?
The line is open, exactly. And I don't like that, so I said I'm not going to use it. But then the radio failed that the engineer could not talk to me. So I was trying to show, tell him, show me the board, go up with the tire pressure, and such things like that.
Wow, that's I didn't expect that. Yeah. When was the last time you raced a car, Thomas?
A few weeks ago, months ago, in Thailand, Super Series, the Lamborghini GT3. So I'm not racing so much, but as you can see, once I do it properly, like in Brno on home ground.
Well, you could not have missed a sports car race at Brno. Why is the track the way it is? We've heard talk of the track being gripless, which is kind of strange because it's never been gripless before.
Well, the track has been, or the surface has been kind of sharpened for the MotoGP guys. And it has been done at the beginning of this year. And for some reason, the grip is not fantastic. And it's eating the tires slightly more than before, than previously. But in wet, it's grippy like hell. So, I mean, we don't have a problem with grip because our car is light. You know, the GT4 KTM is not really consuming fuel, tires, brakes. So we are relatively okay. But we have changed the tires. I need to see how do they look like after one stint, after hour and a three-quarter. So, yeah, but so far so good. No problem at all.
The forecast is for rain tomorrow. Is the forecast pretty accurate here in the Czech Republic?
I don't know what you're looking at, but which website or which forecast. But if it rains, it rains. If not. You know, I don't care. If it rains, it makes, you know, it's spicing up the race slightly, makes it more interesting for everybody, for the tactics, you know, for drivers to get used to it. But yeah, let's see. I hope it stays like that.
Well, Thomas Henke, you were always good in the wet, and you still are. Thanks for talking to us, mate. Good to see you. Good to see you back behind the wheel as well. You need to race some more for us. Thomas Henke there.
Thomas Henke, I think possibly saved our lives one year at the Dubai Autodrome, where we hadn't quite got the grip. It was one of the early years, and he was racing there. We've been doing that for 7 years now, can you believe it?
I think it probably was either the first or the second year.
We hadn't quite got the grips with the air conditioning system in the booth, which was set, and it was set, which was lovely during the day. It was set at instead of being set at a temperature, it was set at a certain amount of degrees below ambient, and it was, I think, 10 degrees Celsius below ambient. So when the sun went down and it got chilly, it gets chilly at that time of year in the desert, we could have leased out the commentary box to store meat in it. It was like being in a huge container that was freezing cold into the pit lane for Company 101.
And this is a very early stop indeed. This is Rick Broiker. I suppose coming towards the end of his 2-hour driving time, isn't he? So that's why he's going to have to come in. And so Rick out of the car.
Just to finish off our story there about Enger, he was listening in and we were struggling massively. And at about, it must have been about 6 o'clock in the morning, he turned up with a dozen hot coffees from the specialist coffee shop in the mall behind the racetrack, which we'd walked out and got and brought back, and he brought coffee and milk and sugar and said, I heard you saying how cold you were, these are for you. Unprompted.
Absolutely, no.
And that isn't the only story I could tell you like that of Thomas Enger. All the racing stuff is great, but he's a top bloke, and we've had some good times with TE. Glad to see him back in the car. Joe Bradley, watch that 101 stop. Rick Broikers brought the car in, getting close to his time. That pit stall is pretty close to the 34 Max Edelhoff car as well.
Yeah, they're next door neighbours actually, and for the same reason, Rick Broikers has brought into the pits the 101 Cupra because he's getting towards the limit of his 2-hour stop, and he's handed the car over now to his brother Luke, who's making this Creventic debut. And right next door, we've got it's Marcus Winkelhock, who's about to take over from Max Edelhoff, who is. And I just want to show you these visually for the people watching on the stream. We've got tyre blankets, electronic tyre blankets that warm the Hankook rubber before they go on the car collection car. And I can assure you, I'm just touching the brand new tyre before it goes on. It's actually very, very hot to the touch. It's not melting, but it's up to temperature or pretty damn close. So well-funded team, Car Collection, and very, very serious going about their motor racing. And as you can, as we can see, or as I've just described, I should say, Marcus Winkelhock, I should say, about to take over from Max. I'll give you a shout when they're on pit road. In fact, you'll probably see them coming in because they're just beneath you.
They're in the pit lane already, yes. So that car coming in. And I'm glad that Marcus is getting into that car because that's going to improve its chances of staying on the lead lap. Quite why he told you he wasn't going to get in the car today, I don't know. But
so they haven't done their sums quite right.
Hang on, that's the
realised.
Hang on, guys, that's the 88 that's come in, not the 34. So Edelhoff is still out there. That's Tim Muller, who started that car, and he's now got 2 minutes to get in the pit lane. Well, he's got a bit more than that because he's been in the pits once already.
Yeah, so for Edelhoff, his driving time at the moment is 1 hour 53.
Yes.
Wow. Plus the lap he's on. So he'll be able to go over the 2 hours elapsed mark. But
so that's about 6 minutes he spent in the pit lane and in fuel when he came in.
The pit stop for Edelhoff.
2:51 for the 34.
Where's the rest of the time gone?
And only pit stop. Well, that takes it to 1:53, thereabouts.
Yeah,
so that column doesn't actually do the sum for us if you're watching on GetRaceResults.com.
Not available online, that one.
No, but
that one is, yes.
And then the next question is, that does have a drive limit, and it's now just ticked over 1:56, which is the same. So that little cell isn't doing the minus pit stop.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
I thought you said it wasn't.
2:51, 1:56 and 2:51. He's already over the time. Oh no, you're right. I see what you mean.
No, it's 1:56 minus the 2:51.
Yes, exactly.
And I don't believe it's doing it for us.
Well, he's got 46 seconds to get into the pit lane for the hours, and Joe Bradley, he's coming in at the end of this lap, presumably.
Yes, he is, because the tyre blankets are just coming off the tyres. It's
what?
Just going to step out the way. Just coming off the tyres. It's the 34 in next. I expected the 34 to be the next car, and it wasn't indeed. It was the 88. I'm going to jump in and get a word with Tim Muller as well, because I want to talk to him about what happened on the pace lap.
Oh, yes, do that. We haven't heard of any sanction for that. The reason that they won't run it any closer, they've got 2 minutes 51 in hand, so they could go almost to 1 hour and 3 minutes. So the reason they don't want to do that is if you get code 60 right now, and you're on the wrong side of the circuit, the lap under code 60 is 5 minutes because it's a 5 kilometre lap, and that would take them over time because code 60 does count if you're out on the track. We'll wait for that car to come in. Yuri Paseric under 7 seconds now, and that lead was what, 40 seconds, 30 seconds? Certainly, I remember seeing 28.
Well over 40.
Yeah, I thought it was.
Yeah.
All right, let's wait for that car to come in, and while we do that, let's stay with Car Collection Motorsport and have a quick word. In fact, here is the 34 car into the pit lane. Let's go back to Joe.
While in the background, the 34 car pits, got a chance to talk to Tim. Tim, it's on everybody's lips. What was going on the pace lap?
You have to ask the other guy. I mean, I was on my place, and he came to my door and knocked the door. I said, okay. I say hello back to him, and I mean, we have to say it was not good. I'm sorry for that, but you know, you start fighting, you start looking, and the guy came to my door and I knocked it, and I said, okay. But anyway, let's focus on the race. Yeah. It's a good race. We are happy to be on P4 because the start in the end was shitty because I was focusing on him more than on the other guys behind me, and all of them passed me. So shit happens, but we are happy. I did a double stint. I feel quite good. I could go another half an hour for sure. But let's see now. Let's see if we can catch the one of the first 3 places for tonight, and then tomorrow we keep on pushing.
2 hours, Tim. It's a long stint. Apologies for the language there. The 34 is in. Max Edelhoff is out. I'll let Max get his helmet off. Take your helmet off, Max. We have got tyre blankets. I'm tripping over them, left, right, and centre. Let me get his helmet off, Mark, if you wouldn't mind. I'm tripping over tyre blankets left, right, and centre. They've just come off the tyres. The 34 car off the jacks now and is leaving the pits. Max just behind me, getting his helmet off.
While you do that, Joe, we're about to go through another hour of racing. Let's just remind everybody that we are live here at BRNO, and we have got just under 1 hour to go today. whilst Max Edelhoff gets his breath back, Joe Bradley standing by. Let's look at how they stand in TCE after 2 hours. It's NKPP Racing by Baz Cowton Racing, an inauspicious start today when that car was nosed into the barriers on cold tyres. The 175 though leads the TCR and therefore the TCE part of the race. They are up to 17th position and they lead by about a second on the second place car, which is the 101 of Luke Breukers. Now that car not happy on its feet at the moment. It's not as light on its loafers as it normally is. Then about another 22 seconds further back, the Autorama Golf number 112. Best of the A3 Synchro, that's in 8th position in the category, and the 676 with Dan Wheeler on board is 26th overall and has laps lead, nearly 4 laps of a lead over the Hoffa Racing by Bonk BMW 240i. So Synchro at the moment playing the long game outside the top 10 in TCE. It's people who have had problems, including the SP3 leader Team ABBA Racing went out whilst in the lead with Sam Neary driving it. Car overheating to the point, or the heat in the car to the point that it managed to melt a sensor inside the cockpit of the car, and the Winkler tuning BMW went out very early on with engine oil outside of the engine, which is never a good thing. In GT, the Bohemia Energy Racing Ferrari of Yuri Piselik is leading. It was down to just under 7 seconds before the 34 of Max Edelhoff came into the pit lane a moment or two ago. So that means it's now 63 seconds on Herbeth Motorsport, the dark grey 91 car, in second place. Ferrari, Porsche, Audi, the top three, with that 34 car in the pit lane. They will lose that third position next time around when Jochen Krumbach, in fact, has just gone through for Wochenspiegel team Monschau. In the 991 class, Porsche Lorient Racing, it's now the 912. They've been swapping backwards and forwards, but the 911's dropped a lap, I think, on its teammate, has it? No, not quite. So that is those two cars still on the lead lap, and behind that, Duo Racing is third. Oh no, Duo Racing now up to second. Sorry, my apologies, missed that on the timing screen. So it's Porsche Lorient 912 from 909. And as far as GT4 is concerned, it's Hoffa Racing by Bonk Motorsport in 14th position, who are in second place in that class. The rest of the top 20 made up from the GT4 cars. The leading GT4 still that 224 RTR Crosspro that is up in 12th position. 20th and down over. Again, it's people who have had problems. The Pro Sport Aston Martin, not... no, that's all right. That's third position in GT4 at the moment. So that's the GT standings. Remember, two different races here. And we've got just on 54 minutes to go. Max Edelhoff has cooled down a little bit. There's a battle for position from the red Camel Jordan and the 175 that we were just talking about. So that means that's battle for the lead in TCR and therefore TCE. The 34 car going through them, that's handy because we can talk. The guy has just got out of the 34 car as young Luke Breukers goes through and takes that position. Perfect timing, and the 34 car leads off into the distance. That was almost a full 2 hour stint for Max Edelhoff.
Max, I want to take you to 2 hours ago. That first corner, that was outstanding. How did you find yourself all the way out there and you just went for it?
I was a little bit surprised because I just calculated when the traffic light go to green, and yeah, I tried to have the best start. And in the car, you really don't know on which length you are with the start with the leader. So I wasn't sure if it was a jump start or I didn't know. So I just decided to stay on the throttle and try to race my race.
That's, at that point, you can't really back off. You've served the penalty for that then, yes?
Yeah, I think so. I get a 10-second penalty. I just did it when the last pit stop. Yeah, but I think the turn was still good.
3 hours, the first 3 hour stint, always going to be 2 pit stops. So was the plan to keep you in, to take you up to the 2 hours, or was the initial plan?
It wasn't really the plan. We thought about it, but we did the decision in the race because at the end my pace was better than in the middle, so we decided to stay a little bit longer and don't go in with the code 60 with the yellow flag. And at the end we just put new tires on, and I finished my 2 hour stint, I think, in a great race.
You feeling good? It's really hot out there. We've seen drivers really being affected by the physicality of the stint.
It was hot in the car, but not so bad that it would be very worse for me. And the track is really nice to drive, not so many fast corners, so the body shape was still good at the end.
Thanks, Max. I'll leave you to cool off. Thank you for your patience as well. Great stuff. Thanks. And that's the difference between a mid-engine car and a front-engine BMW, isn't it? All that heat from the front of the engine in the front of the BMW going through and burning young Sam Neary's feet. Max Edelhoff looking like he can get back in the car and do it all again.
It just comes through the firewall. Talk to people like Ollie Gavin who drive the Corvettes. I remember a few years ago at Sebring, Ollie went through, I think, 3 pairs of race boots. I think he was a right foot breaker in that, so he went through 3 pairs of right boots at least, and in the end, his race boot maker made him a pair of boots that had effectively a sole on them and an insole that were heat resistant. Luke Breukers is getting a little bit frustrated with a GT4 Mercedes ahead of him, and that is the 454 car that started from the pit lane. Gavin Pickering for QSR Racing Skill, 5th in GT4 at the minute, 25th overall. And Luke's catching him through the twisty bits, but can't live with the power of the GT4 down the straights. And there was a slap on the steering wheel from Luke earlier on. Bit of damage on the front of that 454. Has he picked up something in the right front air intake, or has he lost something from the left? Because it's definitely asymmetrically set up on the front at the moment as Luke once again looks around the outside. It's not a battle for position that either. The blue flags are out and Luke will feel he's being held up there, and that is costing him time. And Peter Falstrom, sorry, it's Chris, who is it? No, it's
Gavin Pickering in the 454.
No, sorry, it's the 175 car that's coming up behind him.
Yes.
That's making time, so that's High Spessum's Cupra.
Who is just overtaken, actually. Yeah. And what he wants to do now is pull that gap, and can't, because, I mean, think about Gavin Pickering is, yes, he's in a quick GT4 car, but it's lapped down on the Cupra. So there should be some blue flags here, but the marshals don't necessarily know that they're in that formation.
I know, I've seen blue laps. Gavin's struggling, I think, late on in his stint with tyres that aren't really doing what they want to do. Up to turn 9, and Luke's got up the inside now of the left-hander, and he should be able to clear. He pulls across to the right-hand side. Sorry, that was 7 and... that was 8 and 9. That's the two I always get mixed up. Now coming down the hill to the long right-hander at 10 and the lowest part of the circuit. I've noticed, by the way, that the dashboard that we normally look at to see what the guys are doing with the suspension setup is missing from that 101 car. It's been unplugged. There's a mini USB dangling loose, and the Velcro fastener remains, but there's no control panel there at all now.
Same thing happened to my wife's car when she left her iPad in it. all of a sudden she came back and it was gone. But saying nothing more. The second pit stop for 93 Herbert Motorsport has happened, or is happening, I should say. It's down in the pits at the moment. Zeljko Drumic started the car. Stefan Aust, you mentioned, Johnny, took it over. It's now in for its 3rd pit stop, so we can have an argument as to whether it's Edward Lewis Brown or Stefan Gehrig taking the car over. Fear not, listener, it is the same person.
So whichever one I go with, I'll be right.
Quite,
that's
yes.
Fine.
So he's known as Stefan Gehrig, but for some some reason Creventic has his name as Edward Lewis Browner, but on the car it says Gehrig, and on his overalls it says Gehrig. So I think in terms of what we call him, it'll be Stefan. He'll be taking the car over. He'll be able to get it to the flag from now. We've got just over 3/4 of an hour still to go, and the strategy will be that everybody else, with the one exception of the 93, and certainly insofar as the A6 cars are concerned, everybody else will need one further pit stop to get them to the end of this part of the race. But of course, you don't necessarily want to go to the end of the race on an empty tank. You want to get to the end of the race with as much fuel aboard as possible, which is completely contra to what you would normally do at the end of a race, because normally at the end of a race you want to be empty. This race, part one, you want to have as much fuel aboard as you can.
That gives you the flexibility. The reason for that, dear listener and viewer, is that gives you flexibility at the start of the race tomorrow.
Part two.
Yeah. Because this the restart of the race tomorrow, I should more properly say. And if you get an early start of a race, people are close together. If you get an early code 60, full course purple, then you can possibly dive in there, take half your fuel, and extend again.
Exactly.
Your strategy into the race.
And the amount of time you will lose getting half a tank of fuel is a lot less than it would be if you were doing so under green flag conditions. Although I've been pleasantly surprised. I've only had one code 60 thus far. It was only 8 minutes long, so we've got away with that. With relatively few cars on the circuit, the chances of incidents involving cars coming together fairly small. And what somebody was telling me before the race, we'll expect to see lots of code 60s because people will be spinning off into the gravel. No grip or not, they are keeping it between the white lines for the most part.
Finally, the reappearance of the team ABBA Racing BMW, with Charles Lamb at the wheel, taking that car out. Then it's dropped to 30th position. We feared it may be a retirement, but the M3 V8 GTR returns to the race.
After an hour and 10.
I mean, that's far from ideal when it's only a 3-hour chunk today. And fingers crossed, this is a slightly more comfortable stint for Charles Lamb than it was for Sam Neary, because the last thing we want to hear about racing drivers is they get out of their car after a stint and throw up twice, but that's exactly what happened to Sam. So uncomfortable was his time behind the wheel.
Pass for position in TCR 110 VW into round the outside of the 107, so that's interesting. That was the battle for 4th and 5th position, and Peter Falström has gone by Chris Kemp. And now that that is done and those guys are on the front straight, let's go to Joe Bradley, who's down at the Red Camel Jordan pit. And which of the Breukers do you have?
I've got Rick Breukers. Younger brother Luke is now taking over the car. Rick, I've got to say that was probably a new experience for you there, starting on pole and slipping down the field. I asked your dad earlier, what was he screaming into the radio? What were you screaming into the radio?
Well, the front tires were going really quickly, but the start was pretty good. Our first few laps were really good, and after that, we just saw that our setup was really not good for the long run. Our front tires were going so quickly, and we were losing a lot in the lap time. So we decided to pit early to get new tires, and then the lap times were good again. But for sure, we will struggle the rest of the race with this setup a lot. It's really hard to keep up because the other guys have a lot of oversteer in the corners. And for us, it's impossible to get any oversteer at all. So, yeah, we will see, but it's really hard for us.
It's going to be virtually impossible because we go into parc fermé conditions. What can you do to the car in a pit stop to affect that?
Well, maybe on the record 60 we can do something to change the car, but for sure we will lose a lot of time, so we have to think about it. But it looks like we will just stay with this setup for the rest of the race, and we will see.
We noticed from the in-car camera, Rick, that the control panel for the active suspension doesn't seem to be there. Have you relocated it, or is it not present?
We don't have the screen in the car right now, and it has nothing to do with how our tires are now. We just really misjudged how we would have prepared the car with the balance of the car. So we will have to see how the rest of the race goes, but at the moment we're struggling.
Okay, thanks, Rick. Cheers.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Second place now for NKPP and their Cupra, Baz Counten's team, and it is Let me see, 6 seconds between first and second at the moment, and that sort of metallic khaki green colour looking lovely in the evening sunshine with 42.5 minutes still to go.
It's kind of becoming a trademark NKPP colour, that, isn't it? That kind of khaki green.
Can't remember when they started that, because they didn't used to be that.
I think it's
colour.
only this year that that colour has started, but it's also the colour on the Porsche, which Baz Kooten Racing runs as well. Just looking at Marcus Winkelhock, I mean, he's into that car collection car 88 at the moment, down in 6th place, but lapping far, far quicker than anybody else out on the circuit. He's faster than Pesaric in the lead, faster than Daniel Allemann, faster than Jochen Krumbach in the third place Ferrari. So he's going to be making up places, and he's going to need to, because he is a lap down currently on the race leader. He is going to be able to get to the flag without a further stop, and Pesaric will need a further stop, so that should get him back onto the lead lap by the time we reach the intervention, the Creventic official name for the pause after 3 hours. They call it the intervention break. But Marcus Winkelhock then in the bright orange Audi R8 LMS, going very strongly indeed, and at the moment, as I say, getting himself back into a position where that car could be on the lead lap by the end of this portion.
So a wise decision, possibly on the fly, to get Marcus Winkelhock in the car today. And I was suggesting earlier on, maybe they had misjudged the speed of those at the sharp end in the opening 3 hours, thinking that they would get away with no Winkelhock stint today and have had to change their tune quite rapidly, but that's fine. He was here, of course, to qualify the car earlier on, and it just means that perhaps a planned early exit from the track today had to be cancelled.
The car runs in A6 AM, which means that Winkelhock's driving is limited to a total of 6 hours in the 12. But to be honest, I think that's probably all he'll want to do.
Well, that means 5 tomorrow out of 9.
Yes, exactly.
Basically. So use those wisely. And when do you plug him in? That's the thing. The 34 car that was battling with the Bohemian Energy Racing car for the lead. Dr. Johannes Kerkhoff now in that car in 8th position. A 2:09 last time around for Dr. Kerkhoff. That is still faster than the leader. 2:11 last time for Yuri in the 11 car, heading up towards turn number 3 now. He positions the car on the right-hand side of the road, brakes at the 1 marker, eases the car to the apex. Now that car is turning in to the apex much better than some of the other cars that we've seen, even some of the other GT cars. And Yuri doing a decent job through the first chicane, now going downhill towards turn 5. Look for the little road that comes in from the left-hand side. That's where you brake, turn in. You don't have to go all the way out, because you're going to cut straight back again for turn 6. 7, you can go early to 7. A lot of drivers do kind of hook the curb on the inside, but beware of the 2 tyre bundles there. He makes that 1 apex rather than 2 like some people do. Turn 8, big brake here, down to 2nd. Up over the top of a little rise, which just unsettles the car as you come into 9. Long corner 9, a lot of long radius, high energy corners for the front tyres to deal with. Now, over the top of the brow, shift up through the gears, watch your braking point for turn 10. Ease the car, and again, that's almost a double apex as you come back and drag the car in. Then it's 11 and 12, left and right chicane.
Getting towards the end of the tyres, I think, John, and I think possibly why Pesaric's lap time's going out as far as they did that last time. As I say, it makes sense for him to go as long as he can, just over half an hour of the race remaining, but you don't want to be coming in the last 10 minutes. You want to come in around about 40 minutes, 20 minutes to go, if you can. And I think that's what Pesaric will be aiming for, but the tyres might not allow him to go that far. The lap time this time around, 2 minutes 8, much more like it, so I suspect he hit traffic on the previous lap.
Well, and the problem is, as soon as you have to go offline, you are in the marbles, you are in the dirty part of the track, and all the drivers telling us that they have not seen as much pickup, as much tyre debris offline, these little pieces. It's a slick tyre. The Hankook slick tyre is what everyone is using. And people think, well, you know, there's no tread on the tyre. Why would you have bits of rubber coming off? Well, the tread that you are talking about is the tread blocks are only there if there are grooves in the tyre. You only need grooves in the tyre if you're going to move water. When there's no water, you want the biggest amount of rubber on the road as possible. That's what gives you the grip, not the gaps between them. The gaps between them just allow the rubber blocks to move around. When you have a slick tyre, the whole of the surface, you want to get as much of the surface onto the road, particularly through the corners. That's why suspension setup is so important, to try and get the tyres to come straighter to the ground when the cars are leaning on those tyres, both front and rear. But that doesn't mean that the tyre isn't still shedding rubber. You are rolling little bits of the top surface off that tyre all the time. Now, on a high grip circuit, the tyres stick, the car sticks, the car doesn't move around through the corner so much, it doesn't slide so much. This has been, all the drivers saying it's exceptionally low grip around here at the moment, and Thomas Enger telling us part of the reason why they've ground the top of it for MotoGP, and it's fabulous in the wet, but in the dry, all of those little grooves on the circuit get filled up with dirt and dust, and that's what's causing people problem. So many people talk about the dust. That means the cars are sliding laterally through the corners and not driving through the corners in a nice smooth arc. And what that does is that makes it even more that the surface rubber is getting moved across the tyre. Eventually it gets to the end and gets flicked off the tyre, and you are wearing that surface down. If you look very carefully on a brand new Hankook slick, or indeed any racing slick, you can tell how much of the tyre is left, how much of the actual tread of the tyre or the rubber of the tyre is left, because there are little indentations. Whereas on your street car tyre, there are little bumps in the grooves that tell you when the tread blocks are coming down. What you've got on a racing tyre are little holes in the tyre that disappear, and as they disappear, that tells you how much of the, sometimes it'll be 3-4 millimetres, maybe 5 millimetres of tread on the tyre, of rubber on the tyre rather, before they go out. Pit stop. So that's what's happening
Very
down
good
there at the moment.
What I still don't understand is why there's so much pickup on the straight. Because that's
where it gets thrown off.
Right.
It gets pushed to the very, very edge.
It's rolling through the corners.
And that's the highest speed on the circuit.
And so it's got to the shoulder effectively.
Correct.
And then the high-speed nature just flicks it off, does it?
Yes.
Okay.
And also, if you have picked up anything by running offline in the corner, it will then get thrown off when you're in a straight.
Joe Bradley was watching the Ferrari Wochenspiegel team car. Jochen Creventic came in from third position. Did he stay in the car, Joe?
Yes, he did. He just took on new tyres. And just looking at the tyres that have come off that Ferrari, lots of pickup, just like you've been describing, basically confirming exactly what you're just describing there. And I've just got to say, isn't it fantastic having the Wochenspiegel team Manschau Ferrari here in the Creventic series? It's great to have this team here.
Agreed. Very, very professional team. Tyre engineers checking the temperatures of the Hankook slicks across the whole of the tyre face, so that'll be inside edge, outside edge and centre edge. And the reason that he's doing centre edge, yes, just centre. Sorry. I still have a
triangular tyres.
I still have a man with a pneumatic drill in my head. So outside edge, inside edge, and the centre of the tyres. And the reason they're taking those pressures as quick as they can as they come off the car is because the different temperatures across that tyre face will give them essential information about whether they're running at the right pressure for the end of that tyre's life. And so you might make a change, a bit more or a bit less of your cold pressures.
It's a good indication if you're running the right camber as well, because if you don't, then that might be an indicator. The race leader is in the pits, Scuderia Praha, and is this going to be a driver change, Joe Bradley?
It is indeed.
That was brake dust, wasn't it?
Just breathe in some brake dust there. That's stupid of Bradley to stand at the back of the car. And now he breathes in tyre smoke. Oh, I've got a short life ahead of me, I can assure you. Yuri Zarek has jumped out. Joseph Kroll has jumped in. Again, tyres coming off the number 11 Ferrari, looking pretty similar to the ones I've just watched come off the 22. Lots of pickup on these tyres. I think that's going to be unavoidable because of what you've described there, the surface of the track basically taking the tread off the Hankooks. Unavoidable. We're all sorted here, and he's already off to fueling.
Tell you what's interesting, Joe, the pickup's all on the inside of that. The outside, there looks to be a bit of graining. I'm not sure which of the tyres I was looking at there that's just been wheeled away, whether it was a front or a rear tyre. But that would suggest to me, interestingly, they're not getting enough heat under the inside of the tyre, but the outside of the tyre is overheating. So that, for me, is probably a left front that we were looking at there, because the left front takes a pounding round here. Lots of long radius corners, which puts a lot of energy into the front tyre. And the problem is, when you overheat a tyre, you then have to put more steering angle into the car, and that scrubs it across more, and that overheats the tyre more, and it becomes the very opposite of a virtuous circle. It's a vicious circle, isn't it? That the words I was looking for there.
So we left Jochen Krumbach in the Wochenspiegel Team Monschau Ferrari, didn't we? So that means that Leonard Weiss drove the first stint, Jochen Krumbach staying in for the second, and Jochen is a semi-pro driver, so he isn't eating into the AM driving time, which is required for the Ferrari. But again, that's sensible, because if you can stay on the lead lap, and that I think we're going to end up with 5 cars on the lead lap by the end of the first segment. Pisaric still in the refueling, or not Pisaric anymore, Josef Kral still in the refueling area with the Ferrari. So just waiting to see if Markus Winkelhock has come through, or can come through, and get himself onto the lead lap whilst the Ferrari is refueling. I think he's going to manage it. So that will put 5 cars, but it might even get 6 cars onto the lead lap, because we've got Carol Bass in the Olymp Racing Audi, the other pro class car, the Dayglow yellow and black car, number 8, the Olymp Racing car. Carol Bass is at the wheel, and he will be getting himself back onto the lead lap whilst the Ferrari is doing its refueling as well. It was 3 minutes 30 in the pits last time, 3 minutes 28 this time for the Bohemia Energy Racing with Scuderia Praha Ferrari. So very efficient in the pits. Compare their lap time with the Herbert Motorsport, who has normally been an indication of who is most efficient. Their last pit stop, 3 minutes 58. So it was a longer pit stop from Herbert last time. But good news for Herbert is, with that pit stop for the Ferrari, we now have the Herbert car in the lead of the race. Robert Renauer having started it, now in the hands of Daniel Allemann, and that car will be in the pits within the next, well, maximum 20 minutes. I would expect it to be in within the next 10 or 15.
Here's another leader into the pits, this time one of the TCE category leaders, and this is Dan Wheeler for Synchro Motorsport in the Honda FK8 Civic Type R. And this car is just pulling in and is not stopping on the apron. Joe Bradley.
Yep, they've got a 4-lap lead that they're going to soak up by doing a setup change. Alan James just was not happy with the outside edge on that front tyre on the left front, and so they're going for more camber on the front end. And you can only really do this when you perhaps have a 4-lap lead, and it's going to be very, very quick work by the Synchro boys to do that. We're hearing about this all up and down the pit lane. You heard Rick Breukers describe he can't get the car to rotate. Not quite the same issue here with the number 676 Honda Civic. It's a one for longevity from the front tyre. At the moment, that's too concerning. That left front on the outer edge of the tyre was basically through to the wiring, the substructure, the complete devoid of tread, and it was through to the inner structure of the tyre, which was pretty much in a very dangerous state. And
So Joe,
certainly concerned Alan.
So Joe, outer edge of the left front, and they're putting more camber in.
Yes, so it leans, the top of the tyre leans in more.
Correct.
So it takes more for the tyre to lean out onto the outer edge, and so doing it, you reduce grip, perhaps create a bit of understeer if you can't get the tyre to lean in, but that's to save the outer edge of the tyre.
Well, it means when you're leaning on that corner, it straightens the tyre. It's
leaning onto the outer edge
correct.
at the moment.
Yeah, and
by increasing the camber, you're getting it to lean less on the outer corner.
Yeah, it's not...
On the outer edge, sorry.
When you... And what Joe's talking about there is the difference between where the bottom of the tyre and the top of the tyre is. So when the car's standing still, sitting at rest, and you look at the front wheels on a racing car, actually on any car, but you notice it more on a racing car, the front wheels don't actually stand up straight. The bottom of the tyre, generally speaking, sticks out a little bit more from the vertical than the top. And so the top of the tyre is leading into the inside of the car, the bottom of the tyre is on the outside. That's the camber angle. And what Joe's talking about is pushing the bottom end of that tyre and the wheel out from the vertical even further, adding camber angle to it. Now, that might sound really, really odd when they're struggling with that left front wheel, but the inside of that tyre isn't doing enough work. And when you lean, when you're turning right and the whole of the weight of the car is going on to that front left tyre, it stands that wheel up. And what's been happening on the synchro car is it's actually standing the wheel up so much it's probably going beyond the vertical. We're talking degrees here, but it's going beyond the vertical and putting too much pressure on the very outside edge of the Hankook tyre, and that's been carving almost a groove into that tyre. And that is very, very... It's a complex piece of calculation that they're having to do on the fly.
If you add in the complexity of changing the caster angle as well, and an easy way to explain caster angle is it's caster angle that makes your supermarket trolley's wheels spin round in the right direction for you, and that it's how the front wheels turn from the steering and turn into the corner that affects how the tyre leans into the corner.
Well, if you
talk, I'm not going to complicate it too much by involving caster.
Your caster should...
At this stage, we're just going to adjust the camber.
They shouldn't be messing with the camber too much at this stage. The camber affects the outside edges of the tyre. The caster affects how easy or difficult it is to move the wheel away from the straight ahead position. That's what you feel in the car, and it does affect how much the wheels lean and use that camber angle that we were talking about. But what you're talking about there is if you imagine the absolute straight up and down, the more caster you put into it, the more you are tilting the front struts back towards the back of the car. And the steering connection on the bottom of the steering arms, that was the word I was looking for, gosh, sorry about that, they basically are behind the wheels, and it will continue to pull that wheel straight, and you'll feel that on how much the car pulls back around, and that works the camber that we've talked about. So it's a delicate balancing act here that Synchro have to do in the pit lane. Now they've got what's called a flat patch there, and they've got very, very sensitive measuring equipment. So this is not being done by eye. This is being done by some very, very, very good pieces of measuring machinery.
Somewhat concerned by a message that's just come up on the screen from Race Control that the team manager, car 11, to report to Race Control. Now that came up shortly after the pit stop for the Scuderia Praha car. So I just wonder if there was something about the procedure under the pit lane, when that car was in the pit lane, that Race Control or one of the pit marshals didn't like. We'll tell you if there's a message that comes up after that. No more pit stops for that car or for many of the others before the end of the race. We've still got the top 1, 2, 3 cars to make pit stops. 91 Herbert, 4 from the MDC Sports Mercedes, and 85 the CP Racing Mercedes still to make pit stops before the end of the race.
Another team manager that has to go to the Race Control is the number 8 car as well, of Carol Bars, which is the Olymp Racing Audi, currently 6th place.
Joe Bradley is watching the camber being moved millimetre by millimetre by effectively moving the top mount of the strut, the suspension strut on the front of that Synchro Honda.
Well, on a race car, of course, the top strut is adjustable, and this is the adjustable bit on the top mount, unlike your road car, which is just designed into the top mount and what angle the strut leans at. You can see the guys on the other side adjusting that. This will slide. There's already settings being put to it with these little painted lines so the guys know exactly what to do. I'm going to step out of the way now and let the boys go to work, but they'll know exactly what those lines are assigned to and how much angle. And I think Alan James mentioned something. Did he say 7 degrees or did he say 3?
I thought he said 3, if I'm
3,
honest.
yeah, that's more like it. I remember we had 7 degrees on the Lassetti on the rear.
That's a rear. You wouldn't put 7 on the front of a front-wheel drive car.
No, absolutely. That was on the rear.
Yeah.
I'm going to just ask Alan. So you had 3 degrees on there. What are you going for? 4?
So, no, we've put on, I don't think now, we've put an extra degree on the left and we've taken half a degree off the right. That canvas worried me a bit. We'd never get the 2 hours out of it. And obviously a puncture out there is quite worrying. So we're going to take that loss now and just see where we end up after it. But hopefully it allows us to run for 2 hours now on tyres.
Non-symmetrical camber, I like it. We'll be going to IndyCar next, mate. Yes. McLaren are on the phone already.
Yeah, it is Indy this weekend. Asymmetric setup. There are more right-handed corners here than there are left, so they are the most important. It was the left-hand front tyre that was taking the caning, so they have gone to what is called an asymmetric setup, so the car has different suspension settings on one side to the other. It's quick thinking and good thinking. Remember, that is not that far away from a street car, and to be able to do that just shows you how much engineering goes into these little front-wheel drive cars.
And a lot of very clever people.
Oh, yeah.
Over 8 minutes, though, the car has lost in the pits, but as Johnny said when it came in, it had a 4-lap lead, so that's round about most of the 8 minutes used up. So we'll see whether or not it comes out in the lead of the class or not. It's going to be perilously close, I have to say.
Does the car... the A3 car behind it, the Hoffa Racing by Bond car with Nicole Holzer at the wheel, does that car need a stop before the end of this session? It's only done 1 stop.
No, it could do. It doesn't need one. It's one of those where they either do it now or do it later.
Well, they've got 10 minutes to do it if they're going to do it now.
I'd be inclined to do it now.
I would as well.
We have had the pit stop for the MDC Mercedes. That has come in. Adrian Sumstein has come in to hand over, I would guess, to Philip. It will be Dad's turn last. It's already been driven by sons, Manuel and Adrian. We're still waiting for Daniel Alleman to make his final pit stop, and then we're also still waiting for Charlie Putnam to come in the CP Racing car, because we do have the number 8 Audi, the Olymp Audi, has now come in, although that has fallen back a little bit. However, look at this, because Marcus Winkelhock is just 25 seconds now behind Josef Kral. Both of those have made their pit stop. I was wondering whether he was going to get onto the lead lap or not. No problem about getting onto the lead lap. He's only 25 seconds behind the Ferrari. Although Kral and Winkelhock aren't separated by that much.
There were yellow flags for a moment, and then it went green in the middle sector. And looking at the sector times, I reckon Wim Mulders has had a bit of a drama, because it's taken him 10 seconds longer than it would normally a 991 Cup car. So Speed Lover, maybe a spin and continued in turn 5, but those yellows have been withdrawn.
In the battle in A3, Dan Wheeler is still in the fuel, and we're still waiting for, in fact, just out, and Holzer hasn't come through. So I reckon they've held on to the lead. Only just, but they've held on the lead, but all of their gap has now disappeared. Meantime, Joe Bradley has news on Carol Bass and the Olymp Racing Audi.
Carol Bass has been here with the number 8 Olymp Audi, and he's gone out with a new set of tyres, but the man who handed the car to him, Mateusz Lazowski, Mateusz, the car lost loads of time in fueling. What's the update?
It was some problem with a fuel pump on the station, but we lost a lot of time over there. But I think we have to do it. We have to do something with that, because it is unfair. But anyway, the Carol keep pushing, and I was pushing as well and try my best.
You mentioned that the organisers may be going to give you some time back in the interval when we finish this, because it's easily gauged how much time you lost there.
I don't know exactly, because our engineer knows how many time we lost, but something like 5 minutes maybe, probably. So it is a lot of time. It is no way to to game this time on circuit.
I've got to ask you, what happened on the rolling lap at the start? There was it looked like a bit of aggressive driving there at the front.
I didn't expect, because the driver in opposite side hit me twice or 3 times, and I wasn't shocked. because I didn't know what's going on. And afterwards, he was really late on the accelerator, but I didn't want to cross the line first, because I could, you know, have some penalty for that. And I lost 5 position because I braked, you know, I brake when the light's off.
Yeah, look, it looked confusing from where I was, so I'm sure you were well sick. Did that make you drive faster, though? That must have really angered you.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, it's really disturbed me. But anyway, I try my best to pushing. But in the end of my stint, we had some problem with oversteer, and we had to fight a lot.
Okay, Matthews, I'll leave it to it. So they're going to get that time back. Leader is in, I'm told.
Yeah.
Straight to fueling, I think, John.
Taking a penalty, the leader, Daniel Alleman, before he went down into the pit area.
And also coming in Charles Putman, out of what was 3rd place for CP Racing, and that is going straight to fueling.
He was second very briefly, because he was ahead of the Ferrari when the Ferrari came out, and then got overtaken by the Ferrari on his in-lap.
We've got 16 minutes to go before the intervention. That's 16:31, so 6.5 minutes before effectively the pits are closed, at least for you taking any service without penalty. We'll keep an eye on what's going on in terms of who continues to take fuel loads. I'll be honest with you, I like the enthusiasm and putting it out there from what we heard there from the driver that Joe was talking about, as the 226 is slow now. That's the crossbow that is in 16th class and 19th overall.
Has already had gearbox problems, or actuation problems.
I think has there been some damage to the left, right rear?
It looks like it's sitting further down on the rear axle than it should be. There's not a lot of air in that rear right. Hankook. It's not flat, but and it is sitting on the curb, so might be slightly deceptive.
Thomas Krolik, who's behind the wheel of that car. Yellow flag for the moment. I'm not sure how the organisers would be able to calculate how much time was lost and why it was lost. If everybody who used that same bump had the same problem, then possibly something is done about it. If it's a one-off situation for that one car...
As we were talking to Marish there, I thought possibly it's a procedure problem with how the team uses the pump. And if it is that, then they're not going to get any... very much sympathy, I suspect. But we've gone code 60 with this KTM crossbow stuck just off the circuit at turn 5. And of course, this now plays into the hands of those who still wanted to make a pit stop.
Get in now.
I don't think there was very many of them, actually. I think that most of them had made their stop already, certainly amongst the leading.
Great news for Charles Putman, because he came in, and that means part of his fuel stop will be done under code 60, but he'd be able to get full amount. Michael Fisher, Hoffer Racing BMW, came in under code 60, and that is the 2nd place GT4 car. Cupra leader in. The TCR leader came in just after code 60. Luke Breukers is in, and Joe Bradley is down there before the car's even got to fuel. They have decided to put some tyres on the car.
They're still nursing that front tyre issue, aren't they? They're still, that number 101 car that Rick Breukers described will not rotate. Too much grip in the rear, causing them to burn out the front tyres before anything else happens. So they've taken the opportunity to put some front tyres on the 101. He's already gone in into fueling, so they're still chasing that issue. And I think, guys, they're going to be chasing that on the checkered flag tomorrow, that is.
Yes, yeah, I think you're right. Thanks to Dave Alcock, who has tweeted us here in the booth at RSL_studio. He says, great to see Joe diving into the engine bay and demonstrating the work involved. Rather reminds me of the Lord Reith mantra for the BBC. Educate, entertain and inform. Thank you very much, that's high praise, Dave. Car 8 team manager being asked to report to race control, and the 912 and 226 have been together. Now the 226 is the car that's ground to a halt.
KTM, yeah.
Johnny spotted the damage on the rear of that car, and the 912, of course, is one of the two Porsche Lorient cars, and is that the better placed of the two?
It has to be. Better placed
yes,
of
it's
the
Pascal
two, yes.
Gibbon behind
But
the wheel.
it was only in third place in 911 because both the Duvo and Speed Lover cars had managed to get past.
So that was prior to the contact or the incident, was it? Because I thought 912...
maybe that was the contact.
Well, yeah, I mean, 912...
Oh, it was, yes, you're right.
Yeah, 912, I remember being ahead of Duvo Racing, although they were reasonably equally paced. It was the 911 that had dropped away. So I just wonder whether that clash...
So Pascal Gibbon had just made a pit stop and was on his second flying lap when that happened.
Well, the duo Porsche's in the pit lane at the moment, and they can't. I think they can't. Can they not get the right front off, or can they not get it? Oh no, they can't get it off because I can see the new tyre there.
Yeah.
There's frustration and there's pointing and there's waving and there's shrugging.
The QSR stopped in the wrong place.
Yeah, the QSR Mercedes, complete confusion behind me. Let's get back to the 909 Porsche though. That front right wheel will not come off. We've even had a big bar. Now the wheel nut comes off and it scoots underneath the car. Now the brand new front right goes on. So that belligerent wheel nut would not come off. The QSR Mercedes now found its correct pit stop. The 909 Porsche has thankfully lost that time under purple code 60 conditions. So panic over. Air hose has burst from the bottle in the QSR Racing School team.
That's because they dragged the bottle across by the regulator.
Ah, right, that'll explain that one. He just nipped the pipe to stop the air. Jimmy de Broekes. Jimmy, what's going on? The car couldn't find its paint. We've got air hoses bursting. I think everything needs to calm down.
What?
Everything needs to calm down, Jimmy.
Yes. No, I don't know. But it really doesn't go good. The tires are not good. The car is not good. I don't know. It's a big catastrophe.
The positive is it was all under code 60, so you haven't lost as much time as you potentially could have.
But I drive the first stint, and okay, the first 30 minutes it's okay, but then it's coming, and then the times are at least 10 seconds more.
So why? What's the problem? Is it handling? Is it engine?
A lot of understeering, and then after an hour, it's like ice. You cannot brake, you cannot steering in, you cannot on the throttle, you can do nothing.
Jimmy, if it's any consolation, everyone up and down this pit lane is saying the same. Their tyres are just going off. So you're not in this alone. And the car is gone. Thanks, Jimmy.
Back to green flag in that as well. Joe Bradley, can you step back in front of the camera?
Yes, sir.
Step back in front of the camera. You're going to have a sore forehead today.
Am I?
Yeah. You've
don't
caught the
realise
sun.
when you're having so much fun.
Yeah.
No, you're right.
It's really hot down here, but it's cooling off.
It's just the...
I've got a cap with me. Guess what?
Might be a bit
it's in
late.
my bag.
It's in your bag.
Of course. I haven't worn it, have I?
No.
I have a red head.
Thank you, Joe. Joe, the Belisha Beacon Bradley. He's going to be glowing tonight when we go for dinner. A quick word, by the way, for our catering team here at Creventic. Brought in this year, Aaliyah have been looking after us. Isla, is that how you say it? Right, Isla have been brought in this year to do the centralised catering in the paddock, and the team have been working very hard indeed over the last couple of 3 races, and it's been much appreciated. Thank you very much for looking after us, everyone down there. And we'll be heading there after the conclusion of the first part of this race in the intervention spot, and we are now inside the 10 minutes. So pit stops now will incur a 2-lap penalty. So if you haven't pitted now, if you aren't already in the pits now, as we are looking at the turn 3
battle for position,
and that is the 91 Daniel Alleman Herbeth Motorsport going back to space, suggesting that Krumbach was doing some decent times in the Wochenspiegel car, and he's pulled back a decent gap there, and last time around took 3 seconds out of Daniel Alleman. Now, some of that might have been just getting back up to speed after the code 60. Your team's got to be talking to you all the time. You've got to know exactly where the next flag station is, and your team's got to be screaming at you the moment that the timing screen goes back to green flag racing, because you're not always in the position to be able to see round a car that you're following or something like that. So that is a new 3rd overall and 2nd in A6 AM.
In effect, at this point in the race, with just 7 and a bit minutes remaining before we get the intervention, anything you do now, I won't say it's a waste of time, but any gaps are going to get squashed. If you take a position, then you're talking about a move up the grid by whatever position you're going to move up.
Unless
the grid.
you're unlapping yourself, of course.
Yes, if you're taking a position in the overall positions, then yes, you're moving a point up the grid. In terms of who's on the lead lap, the car that isn't on the lead lap, the first car that isn't on the lead lap is the 5th placed A6 AM car. We have to talk about A6 AM because it is also a lap down in terms of the A6 AM.
Correct.
Regardless of the race leader.
Is it?
Yes. I believe so. We may have that but looks like it at the moment. So the top 4 are all on the lead lap. As far as the TCE division is concerned, we go back to the top 5 that are all on the lead lap. So it's going to be very close when we get the grid formed up for tomorrow's remaining 9 hours.
Yeah, I will agree that Dr. Johannes Kirchhoff is off the lead lap, and he's well off the lead lap now by something in the region of 20 seconds. It is, unfortunately, he's trying to chase down Marcus Winkelhock, isn't he, in the bright orange number 80.
He's the class leader, exactly.
He is the class leader. It's worth making up a position if you're making up a lap, because you'll get all of that lap that you make up back immediately that we go into intervention. So if you can do it, that's important. And Daniel Alleman dropping away immediately from Jochen Krumbach.
And Josef Kral in the lead Ferrari has probably, I reckon, only got 2 laps to go at the end of the one that he's on. So he'll get this one plus 2 more.
A little word for Carol Bass in the Olymp Racing Audi, which lost that time earlier on. Fastest lap of the race for that car with a 2:03.9 last time around. So there's life in that one. Obviously, it's had a pit stop relatively recently. The best lap that we have had from anyone is a what, Paul?
It's 2 minutes 3.011 from Malicelli on the 2nd lap of the race.
Where's the 11th car now?
It's in the lead of the race.
Oh yes, sorry, I was looking at the last lap times, not the best lap times.
2
yes,
minutes 3.01.
And it's 37 seconds between 1st and 2nd. But Winkelhoff doesn't need to be chasing him down, because that's going to disappear.
Right now, as long as he stays ahead of the Wochenspiegel team Monschau Ferrari, he might as well just fuel save.
Yeah.
Because he's going to finish. He's
got 1 minute and 20 seconds on the Wochenspiegel car.
And so he might as well save as much fuel as he can. They're going to be side by side on the grid, the Ferrari and the Audi. Which I suppose is a place lost as far as Marcus is concerned, because they started part 1 on pole. The Scuderia Praha Ferrari started part 1 on the 2nd row.
88 went down to 6th place though on the first lap. Yes. I think let's not forget that. Battle for the lead in the TCE category. Again, this is more for overnight bragging rights than anything else, because they're all on the same lap. As Paul mentioned, the top 5 in TCE, and by the way, they're all TCR cars in that top 5, are all on the same lap, and that was Luc Breukers and East Bessem in 991 Cup first. Ooh, there's nearly a lap between 1st and 2nd in the GT1 cars. Sergei Peregodov for Dual Racing and Wim Mulders in the Speed Lover car. See where they are on the circuit. Yeah, they're in the same sector, so I'll see who clears that next time around. Carol Baz pushing on in that green and grey Audi, going through turn 3 at the moment, Johnny.
Yeah, it's about 2 minutes between them, but less than a full lap.
Right, yeah.
Gijs Bessem is faster than Luc Breukers in this stage of the race, and I just wonder whether he's going to have a go here. I don't know. There's an Audi between them at the moment. That's the 88 car, Marcus Winkelhock, who's sliced between them, but he will clear the orange 101 very shortly indeed. Obviously, there's no pressure on Huisbesem to take the position because they'll start tomorrow side by side at the front of the TCE Series race. But as you say, for NKPP, former winners of this race, that was when it was a 24-hour and wasn't running the TCR category. I think they were winners in SP2 3 years ago. But for bragging rights, Huisbesem might try a little move, maybe on the final lap. Still 2 minutes and 40 seconds to go.
It's a bit like going for pole position, isn't it?
Pretty much, yeah.
Because it matters only which side of the front row you start, but it does, yeah, as you say, just gives them a little bit more to pack up with. There's a number of cars that have penalties, which they haven't yet taken, as far as I know. Although, actually, the screen has just told me about the false starts penalty for Max Edelhoff, and we know he's taken that one. So
well, he said he did.
Yeah, well,
Never believe a driver when you're talking about penalties or whether they're spun or not.
No, quite. It doesn't make any sense coming to the pits to do a penalty now, but I don't know if they'll get transferred into a penalty they have to take tomorrow, or whether it will be added to their race time and then affect their grid positions on this part of the race.
The 991 category, there is 22 seconds. The speed lover car, Wim Mulders, is 22 seconds away from going a lap down, but with 1 minute and 31 seconds, so the maximum 2 laps, he's just got to make sure he doesn't go that lap down and not take too much out of the car. And this is where strategy at this time of the race can pay dividends in the morning.
He's basically getting 2 minutes for nothing.
Yes.
Because provided he doesn't get overtaken on this or lapped on this last couple of minutes of the last few seconds of the race now, because we're on the last, it's getting towards the end of the race.
And then while we're talking about leaders, remember Synchro Motorsport, they came in to do a camber change on the front of the Honda, number 676. Dan Wheeler took that car back out as the Porsche and BMW are fighting on the track. We'll keep an eye on that. And this is the 911 and the 409 that are fighting. They fight for 14th and 15th position. They're not in the same class. They're both actually third in their respective categories. Dan Wheeler has just turned the fastest lap of the race for that Honda FK8 Civic. And we thought that the Hoffa racing car, Nicole Holzer, was going to be close. It was for a moment on the lead lap, but it has taken a pit stop, so it's now dropped to 2 laps back. And Dan Wheeler is putting some cracking laps in on that car with the new front end setup on it to try and take some pressure off the left front tyre. 14 seconds to go. This will be the last lap before intervention for Joseph Kral. He's just crossed the line with about 20 seconds to go. He's heading up towards turn 3 now. Johnny Palmer.
And of course, anyone in the TCE Series race, at the end of the race is still governed by the GT Series leader, so they'll have to go around again, effectively. And TCE still being led by Luke Broikers and Huisbesem. They're separated by 4 seconds. I think that's going to stay as it is pretty much now, because Huisbesem caught a bit of traffic, and I think he's just going to, relax now and finish second, which is perfectly fine.
What Johnny means is those guys haven't crossed the line to start their last lap.
That's right.
Yeah.
And of course the clock is now 0, but we don't get a separate checkered flag for the TC, even though it's considered a separate race.
Yes, that is a very good point, actually. Well explained, JP.
Because the GTs have started their final lap, and only now do the TCE Series leaders start their final lap.
But they don't go round again. They merely get given a credit lap come tomorrow's restart. So once the checkered flag goes out for Josef Kral, everybody who goes past the checkered flag has to take the checkered flag.
Yes. As if it was as if it was just the end of the race.
Yeah.
Yes. But they have now crossed the line with the clock at 0.
Yes.
So
they go round again.
They go around again in that respect. That's what
they will get the checkered flag.
Explaining it brilliantly well, but we've always talked about GT and TC being
Yeah.
separate races. At the end of the race, they're kind of not, because it's all dictated by the GT Series leader. And it'll be a 79 lap opening for this race, therefore,
It's not
after
hanging
3
about.
hours.
Not hanging about. We've had a couple. How many full course?
Just 2.
Purples, just the 2.
There's
so
the
the
checkered
flag for the intervention is out for Josef Kral. And therefore, the local team, who have never been bested here at BRNO in whatever format the race has taken.
Yeah. We've had a full 12-hour race. 15. We had a 12-hour race and a 24-hour race in 16.
At
They
the same
won all
time,
three
yeah.
of those.
Yeah.
And now even at the intervention point of a split 12 hours, they also managed to win that. So pressure's on now. Can they be victorious at the end of 12 hours across 2 days tomorrow?
Matteo, you must be happy with that so far.
Yeah, for the moment we are happy. It's only the first part. It's a shame because we were near to have one lap, but it's okay for tomorrow.
Mario, everyone we talk to has a problem with no grip in the tyres and the tyres going off. How is the Scuderia Praha Ferrari?
Yeah, we have I think the same problem. We cannot push on the car on the braking because otherwise we have oversteer. And just try to drive as clean as you can, and for the moment the car is working.
Who starts the car tomorrow?
I will start for sure. Thanks, Mario.
Well done. Another good job from the Scuderia Praha team on home ground as well.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of people here, friends, family, clients. This is a big, big race for these guys.
Just a note on that, and Matteo Melicelli makes a good point. Driving time is reset at the end of this race, so even if you had been at 1 hour and at this part of the race, at 1 hour and 59 minutes, you can start tomorrow and you get another 2 hours.
That's absolutely right. The sense in which driving time does count is in making up your minimum driving
Correct.
time for your AM drivers. That has counted, and as Johnny was saying, because some of the drivers have gone on to do more than 3 hours, that actually counts as being more than their 3 hours would have been otherwise.
Yeah. Yes, I see what you mean. Yeah, very good. So Bohemia Energy Racing with Scuderia Praha have a 41-second gap at the end of the first part of the race. That will disappear tomorrow. Top 4 will start in the top 4 grid positions, and those will be their gaps. So Herbeth Motorsport in 4th position will get nearly 2 minutes back on the leader, free. Absolutely gratis. The next couple of cars, 3 cars in fact, are 1 lap off the lead lap. They'll all start in the next 3 places. And that is Car Collection CP and Herbeth, group of AM cars there. And then it's MDC Mercedes, Olymp Racing. They're on 2 laps away from the lead. And the GT4 leader, RTR Projects, is 3 laps away, but obviously leads the GT4 category. And still in the top 10 for the GT4, actually displacing the 991 class leader, which is now duo racing in that 909 Porsche, despite that fracas around the front right front fracas, and that car is 5 laps off the lead. So if I go down to the second one, I think they might have a lap on the rest of their category. Yes, maybe. It depends where they were in comparison to the leader as to whether they get that back. So that's the GT part of the race. TCE, and we've got the TCE leaders standing by for an interview, which we'll grab in just a moment. Oh, and just a moment or two ago, a problem for the BMW that lost a tyre. I thought it was going to be a wheel making its bid for freedom, but the tyre carcass has made a bid for freedom from the left rear. So a puncture and the tyre making its bid for freedom. Let's, before we give you the standings in TCE, go down to the team. This is, spoiler alert, this is the team that's leading. He's down with the 101 Red Camel Jordan's Cupra team.
Okay, Ivo, how did you do that? Because the last time I spoke to you, your head was in your hands, the tyres were ruined in 10 laps, and now here you are leading TCE.
Actually, I have to look back at it because I'm thrilled. I don't know. We are very happy, but we played around a little bit with the fuel quantities, etc. Looking for code 60. We're not so lucky. Good stops, and the back of the car is now getting a little bit closer to us because the tire wear. So, but still, it's a hard race and strange race.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a long way to go. You must be actually having a ball racing with the 2 boys.
Yes, it's great, and it's fun. And Luke was singing in the car. He's doing well. Sometimes you see him on board and you cross your fingers, but he's doing quite well. And yeah, we don't have much fuel left now, but anyway, we finished on the first part, so we are happy.
As a father of 2 kids in racing, The bad news is they're both quick. So good luck with that one.
I do my best.
So that car has somehow found itself at the top of the standings in TCE, Johnny Palmer.
Yeah, and being chased down to the flag, but Gijs Bessem couldn't get close enough to attempt an overtake. I don't think he was going to try anything stupid. 3 hours into a 12-hour race, happy to just sit behind the Red Camel Jordans.nl machine that leads then at the intervention point, and the first of the two checkered flags. Gijs Bessem second for NKPP, former winners of this race. Akil Rabindra actually not in the makeup, of course. He came next in the combined times, but it was Kari-Pekka Laaksonen for Autorama Motorsport with their Volkswagen Golf, having taken a couple of victories already this season. Fourth for Sweden, Lestrup Racing Team with another Golf Monlau competition. You remember Stuart Hall at the start of the race was well in the mixture. That car fell to 5th position, but only a lap off the other cars, and that might actually condense overnight because the order and also the increments between the cars is judged by the TCR leader rather than the GT Series leader. And the 6 laps and 7 laps and 8 laps down on that graphic is all about the GT Series leader there. So that we'll get news on that overnight. 5th place and on the lead lap. And on the lead lap for Monlau competition. AC Motorsport finished 6th ahead of the TTC Racing Seat Leon. A3 overnight will be led by Synchro Motorsport with the highly adjusted Honda FK8 Civic. They were working hard on the front suspension of that car, and they had the time in hand in order to do a lengthy stop to do that work. A couple of laps back for the Hoffer Racing by Bonk Motorsport BMW M240i 869, and then 10th position, another TCR car, the entry from Denmark, Team Hyundai's i30N. And we did see the BMW from Team ABBA Racing return to the track. Charles Lamb took the checkered flag as the SP3 leader, but it's the only SP3 entry in this year's race. And Winkler Tuning, sadly that car not making the flag after parking up in the pits well over 2 hours ago with a significant drama for the only diesel car in the entry.
So, a fantastic first 3 hours of the Hankook 12H BRNO. And we started off in bright sunshine. We finished in bright sunshine. It's been a cracking day. A little bit of argy-bargy before the green flag, or the green light even showed, was looked at. There's been battles in all of the leading categories. All of the categories amongst the leaders, should I say. The story of the day, grip, 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 or lack thereof. Fighting its way at the front of TCE, the ABBA BMW had a gearbox problem. The Hyundai went off into the beach. Gelato time and a deck chair perhaps. Couldn't really work out what had happened to that, and we didn't get the word from down in the pit lane. Maybe that's something to sort out. Great battle in A3 with Synchro battling back to the head of the field and even finding enough time to do some setup changes to try and combat the problems with left front tyres. And problems also in GT4 for the KTMs. And right at the very end, after we'd got the ABBA Roll Centre, the ABBA BMW car back on a puncture in the left rear of the car. At the front of the field, Marcus Winkelhock did his best to chase down Josef Kral. It was 41 seconds at the line, so they never really got close. I think they got about to 50 seconds ahead of the field. Didn't really get close to putting a lap on the field. All of the top 4 down to Herberth Motorsport in 4th position will be on the lead lap at the start. In TCE, it will be the Red Camel Jordan alongside the 175 NKPP racing car as they start at the head of the second start for the TCE category. Johnny Palmer and Paul Truswell, thank you very much indeed. We're back on the air at 9:30 Central European time tomorrow. We'll have 9 hours of the race. The weather forecast is pretty good, and I can't see anything different than a proper, full-on, flat-out battle, which is exactly what we've had today. Joe Bradley and Nick Damon were down in the pit lane. It was Kerry back in London, and Fabian and the team here. Sorry, Fabian, and the team here. It's making sure that the pictures got to you. Thanks to everybody concerned. It's been a cracking day, and we'll be doing it all again tomorrow. Can the Josef Kral Bohemia Energy Racing team continue their 100% record at their home track here at the Automotodrome Brno? We've got 9 hours tomorrow to find out. Bye-bye. Welcome to the Endurance Road Racing Series for GT and Touring cars. With the champion of the continent, European Championship, TCR Spa 500 and TCR Middle East. That's 12 races across 3 continents. The best endurance racing experience for everyone. Welcome to the world of endurance. This is endurance.